All your base are belong to us.
Hello, and welcome to Fake Geek Girls, a podcast looking at nerdy pop culture from both a fan and critical perspective, encouraging the things we love to do better. I'm Missy, I'm a writer, and I love how goopy these aliens are. And I'm not going to get to talk enough about goop.
That is unfortunate for you, because you do love a goop.
I love goop.
I'm Mary Marketer, and I am excited to talk about mom being mom. I'm really excited. I'm very, very excited for this episode just because we got two totally different perspectives on one part of this movie.
Yeah.
Well, it's called Well-Rounded.
One of us is a mother and the other one of us is horrified by the idea of being a mother, being pregnant, giving birth, all of it.
All the above.
All of the above. And I'll let you figure out which one it is. I'm still working on our new audio setup, so please bear with us as there's some bumps and stuff. But I did just get new pop filters, which I think are going to be a huge benefit. So let's get right into it because this is going to be a long episode and I had to cut two sections.
Ever not long.
I mean, it's always long, but there's this is a 35-page outline and I cut it down. I cut it down to 21 pages. So that's all the shit that I had to cut.
Okay.
I had to cut almost as much as is in the episode.
Well, we got a whole nother episode to go. So.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep it. So I'm going to give the barest summary here of these movies because we're talking about 4 movies and there is a lot to discuss. So Alien, the first one directed by Ridley Scott. The first Alien films the first Alien film follows the crew of the Nostromo, a spaceship owned by the as yet unnamed company. The crew are awoken early from cryogenic sleep because the ship and the synthetic member of its crew have detected a life form on a nearby planet that the company wants them to retrieve. On this planet, a member of the crew is attacked by a creature that hatches from an egg, and Ripley, our main character, initially refuses to let him back on board due to security protocols, but is overridden. It turns out that the crew member was impregnated by the creature, which bursts from his chest and rapidly becomes an adult xenomorph that stalks and kills the remaining members of the crew until only Ripley is left. And there you have it. Aliens, directed by James Cameron. Aliens does away with the horror vibes of the first film and leans heavily into action. Ripley is once again woken from cryogenic sleep, this time after decades. She's always being woken up from cryogenic sleep.
Who's not?
Let this poor girl get a real nap.
How to get a nap.
I mean, she was asleep for 57 years, but still.
After, some people deserve it.
She really deserves it. So she's awoken once again to return to the planet from the first film, which has since been terraformed and colonized by the company, who has recently lost contact with the colonists. Because Ripley knows more about the xenomorphs than anybody, she reluctantly returns to the planet along with a host of space marines to find out what happened. While there, they find one surviving person, a young girl named Newt, who lives in the ventilation system and becomes a surrogate daughter to Ripley, and a lot of aliens who, you guessed it, stalk and kill the crew. Importantly, we're introduced to the Queen in this film, a hulking giant xenomorph that lays the eggs that hatch into the face huggers we first encountered in Alien. Ripley, Newt, and one other crew member and the crew's synthetic person escape. Alien 3, directed by David Fincher, who famously hates the film. Alien 3 picks up not too long after Aliens. Newt and Hicks are immediately killed off as Ripley ends up on a prison planet exclusively for men, including men who have committed violent crimes against women. Wikipedia says they have a, quote, genetic predisposition to antisocial behavior, which unfortunately is not explored at all.
So in the box set that Bob gave you is the other cut of it?
I watched the theatrical versions for all of them because I assumed that was going to be what most people were familiar with.
Yeah, the other cut just got put on HBO, and Bob's like, oh, you can go watch it. I go, there's nothing that can make me rewatch the third one, especially since it's a half hour longer.
Yeah. So fair.
Apparently it's better, but when you're at the bottom of the barrel, better doesn't mean much.
Right. This movie is honestly so boring overall, and nothing much happens except that Ripley has sex with someone who immediately dies afterward to the alien. Shocker, the alien is there, but then the alien spares Ripley. They try to flush the alien out, etc., but it turns out that Ripley is actually carrying the embryo of an alien queen inside of her, which is why the alien won't hurt her. The company arrives and wants Ripley to have the queen surgically removed, claiming it will be destroyed, but Ripley is too smart for that shit and throws herself into a furnace rather than give up her body to the company or the alien, which honestly is the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
Then we have Alien Resurrection, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who, no joke, directed Amelie, and written by Joss fucking Whedon in the most Joss Whedon-ass way.
I could not. I was about to start this. I wanted to see who did it, and I was like, Joss Whedon? And then I watched it, and I was like,
yeah,
Joss
fucking
Whedon.
Joss Whedon did that. Alien Resurrection takes place 200 years after the last film. Ripley has been cloned and fused with the alien queen, meaning she now wears sexy leather pants and kicks ass in a way that makes me roll my eyes out of my fucking head. God, I'm so fucking done with Joss Whedon at this point. Anyway, a group of mercenaries show up to deliver some humans for military scientists to test on, and then, oh shit, there are aliens there. Because of the genetic tampering, there's an alien with a fucking womb that gives birth to a Ripley alien hybrid that Ripley has insane sexual tension with. I'm sorry to say it.
It's so
in
weird.
the movie, they're like their mother-daughter, but their interactions are giving, they are 2 seconds from making out sloppy style.
It's really difficult, I think, to have a mother relationship with the alien, just by how much salivation is happening.
They are so sexually designed, which is something that we'll talk about throughout the episode, that like I can't read any interaction with one of these aliens as non-sexual. Like the sex is everywhere.
they are designed that way.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Anyway, she kills the hybrid and she and some of the mercenaries escape.
The slooping it out of the ship
God.
was insane.
That was painful to watch.
It was insane. Still so much better than the third one.
Yeah. I do want to give obviously a content warning for this episode. Violence, sure, but we are going to talk not like very in depth or anything, but sexual violence is a theme throughout this movie. So expect us to talk about rape and about sexual violence. Again, we're not going to go into like gruesome detail or anything, but if that kind of thing is distressing for you, you may just want to skip this one because it is going to be a key theme. So let's move on to a big, huge umbrella that we need to talk about here, which is gender. So much has been said about the Alien franchise and gender. Ripley is an iconic final girl. Ripley was originally not given a gender, like in the original story, making her unique among many female leads. She wasn't originally designed to be a woman. Ripley is both like overtly feminine and very badass in a way that was like not super typical for the period in which the original film was released. By the time we get to Joss Whedon, boy, the Joss Whedon of it just fucking stinks. Ripley is a huge inspiration to a lot of people who watch this movie and just like feel like really empowered by her. But you know, she's also sexualized pretty dramatically in the film's ending. She's a mother, but she's also not a mother. There's a lot to say.
So there is scenes that got cut that show.
And I decided to leave that out of the conversation because it's not canon.
This is true.
It's interesting, but if we start factoring in things that are not canon to the films or exist outside of the films, then suddenly this episode doubles, triples, quadruples in size. So we're gonna narrow our focus to what is in the theatrical cuts.
Yes, but it does make more sense that why she would attach to this random child. But it does. It absolutely does. The thing that gets me though is it weakens a really interesting point that we'll talk about later. So what we're not going to do in this episode is debate whether Ripley is a feminist, because I don't care. We're not going to say, yes, you must be inspired by Ripley, or no, you shouldn't be. We're going to talk about Ripley and gender and all of these things, but we're going to look a little harder at what purpose gender serves in this series, as well as concepts like abjection, the Monstrous-Feminine, and motherhood. And then we'll talk about masculinity, because we have a lot to say about femininity. But this is a patriarchal world, right? The world that we live in and the world of these films are patriarchal. So talking about femininity is actually also talking about masculinity. Femininity is just constructed as the other. So first I want to question a common thing I saw while researching. A lot is said in criticism of the series, not like bad criticism, but just like discussing the film, that Aliens makes it clear that the alien is female. But I would like to say, is it? I think that you could make that argument for the Queen.
Even so, hear me out.
Okay, I'm ready.
Hear me out. So let's look at some evidence here.
Okay.
First, obviously, we see the alien laying eggs in the second film, right? Mm-hmm. We understand as human beings with complex concepts of gender that the ability to produce eggs is not an indication of gender, right? Yes. We have literally no idea whether the aliens have a concept of gender. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I believe the average viewer, especially in the period these original 4 films were being released, would have read The Alien Queen, a title people give to it, not a title it gives itself.
Well,
right?
I can't.
We don't know that. We don't know.
It can't tell us. It can't tell us.
It cannot tell us.
Well, you know what? We do know if it has language when you watch the TV show.
Okay. I believe that the average viewer would have read The Alien Queen as female because it lays eggs, full stop. Like, in the time period in which these films were coming out, I don't think a lot of people were going to be like, well, let me tell you about biology.
Yeah.
perhaps all of the aliens are female, or all of the alien queens are female, or perhaps just that one. But when it comes at least to the alien and aliens, people sure are stuck on the idea that it is female. I would actually argue that there's an unintelligibility of gender here that is more frightening to a general audience. The idea that we can't tell what sex this thing is.
And that if you're you based off of how it's built, the xenomorph is created, you almost kind of have to sexualize it to embrace the fact that you're going to say it is a woman or is a female.
Yes. Because while the alien design does have qualities we associate with femininity, this is a quote from Wikipedia. Geiger initially designed the eggs with a much more obvious vaginal appearance, complete with an quote inner and outer vulva, not labia. The producers complained that Catholic countries would ban the film if the illusion was too strong, so Geiger doubled the lobes to 4 so that, in his words, quote, seen from above, they would form the cross that people in Catholic countries are so fond of looking at. Which is absolutely hilarious. Shout out to Geiger for that one.
That's spectacular.
But this connection visually between the eggs and the alien itself and vulvas and vaginas, including their production of slime. I'm sorry to refer to vaginal lubrication as slime, but like that...
It is what it is. It's
slimy, and that... What's coming off of them, I had this discussion with my husband. What's coming off of them doesn't look like cum to me. Mm-mm. It looks like vaginal.
Well, especially right before they lay an egg.
Yeah. Yeah. So this this visual connection between the eggs and the alien itself, vulvas, vaginas, etc., is pretty vivid. These designs are also quite phallic, though, right? The long head, the chest burster, the little tongue with teeth, like. The alien design to me completely resists easy classification. And because some of the things we'll talk about later, especially sex and violation, I believe that this unintelligibility, this inability to be easily classified as male or female, actually makes them more frightening to the audience because we can't quite understand what this thing is.
Which is probably why people are really adamant
that it's a woman. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if they don't, then it kind of makes them take into question things that they feel they know about what being a woman is. For me, the way that watching this movie, I relate to the alien. I feel like that's obvious why. But so when I see it, because
Mary also likes to stalk and kill.
This is accurate. I at least like to read about them. Having that connection, I just immediately connect like, oh, this is female because of my experience, but I don't think it needs to be. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's that interesting of everything. I just don't know if that's the most interesting. I also don't know if we were to give it that, if the writers had the ability to make that more complex. I think personally, I don't think that there's an intentional questioning of gender on the part of the creators of Alien. Geiger has been because it's not written by women.
Yeah. Geiger has been quite clear in his statements on the xenomorph designs that he was trying to channel a sense of uncanny femininity in the use of vulva and vaginal imagery. But the fact that most critics refer to the xenomorph as she and mother when discussing aliens in particular just like fascinated me. Because yes, our understanding of life is that female creatures are primarily responsible for the production of eggs, but that alien seems completely able to disconnect itself from the egg-laying apparatus.
But then the question becomes, this is for me like I was thinking of, because I obviously as I'm watching this. So here's the thing. When I watched this, right before I watched the second one, I was having a really hard time, like just being a mother. It was coming out, like it was just, as every mother has with a young child, it was just like too much. I was ready for the end of the day. I was like, I'm going to watch this movie because, and feel something from it. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but I ended the movie. I was like, hey, that did exactly what I wanted to do. And I relate to the alien.
You got the full abject, monstrous-feminine experience. Yes. We haven't talked about that yet, but you got it.
But that made me think, like, if we're going to assign gender, and we're going to use the things that we know, we can only assign it to the queen. Mm-hmm. We can't assign it to the others.
Well, and even then, because like what I'm saying is that like it detaches itself from the egg-laying apparatus. Exactly. So what is it when it's not laying eggs?
You've lost that argument, essentially, when you're just looking at just the xenomorph who's not the queen. Mm-hmm. So now you're just going off of things that aren't as concrete. You can say that lays eggs. Mm-hmm. You cannot say that is a vagina. It's an alien. So that really made me I was thinking about that and all of the question. I was like, we really can't, like, I can understand the argument, the queen, but I just don't think you can make that jump easily if you really want to get into, I truly don't care. Right. To be honest. But
I don't care what gender what sex the alien has. Yeah. What is interesting to me is the unintelligibility and the resistance of easy classification, especially because the queen detaches itself from the egg-laying apparatus. Like, what is it when it's not laying eggs?
Yes. 100%.
It's an interesting question about womanhood too, right? Like, what is
especially now?
Yeah. What is a postmenopausal woman?
All the many of the things that people say where, like, when they're being transphobic, a lot of the things they say makes someone not a woman are things that many women experience.
Right.
The inability to have children, the your ovaries, your uterus. People don't always have those things.
Right.
The hormones. Okay, well, what happens when the hormones drop after like all these things?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a good point.
And if sex and sexual production is flexible in this universe, like for these creatures, that lets us read the, in my opinion, very intentional rape allegory at work and how the xenomorphs reproduce in an interesting way. It's no longer just about the inversion of expected violation, like this is what it feels like to be threatened as a woman, for example, but it's about threat, invasion, etc. on a broader level. I think the aliens are given clear sexes in the novelizations, from what I understand, but I don't actually care about that all that much. I think it's reasonable to interpret the aliens as essentially hermaphroditic or capable of changing sex to produce offspring.
That would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, like we don't see the eggs being fertilized, right? Yeah, which implies self-fertilization.
That's what I always thought. I thought it was self-fertilization because we see the implantation into the human, but we don't see the other side of that.
Right.
So to me, when I that's just what I assumed it was. Because that happens in nature as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, we don't see the eggs being fertilized, but they still produce offspring. That means that either we don't see them being fertilized, but there is some kind of fertilization happening, a leap that I don't think we have to make given that we're discussing alien biology, or that they are fertilized and produced by the queen, which is much more interesting to me. And for the record, that's not a biological impossibility. It's rare on Earth, but we do have parthenogenic creatures that are capable of reproducing without a mate.
I do think it would be a fun conversation to give in to the idea, I don't want to say give in, but like to accept the idea that
submit to the idea
that they are all women and talk about like a matriarchy.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting way of when if we're gonna gender them and you're gonna really stick to gung-ho, then that's the conversation that could be had that would be really interesting.
Yes. Anyway, all I'm saying here is that I think it's worth questioning our immediate assumption that the alien is female just because it lays eggs. So let's switch gears to talk about abjection and the Monstrous-Feminine, which means we are going to talk about it as if the alien is female, because I do think that is the intent. Intentional or not, I think the Alien franchise embodies two very important concepts in feminist criticism: abjection, which comes from Julia Kristeva, and the Monstrous-Feminine, which comes from Barbara Creed. So it's worth noting that Kristeva is not an easy read. I tried, but we're still going to get to, we're going to get to some Wikipedia for this one because there is only so much I can do. This was a tough one. So in Powers of Horror by Julia Kristeva, Kristeva writes, "It is thus not the lack of cleanliness or health that causes abjection, but what disturbs identity, system, and order. What does not respect borders, positions, rules, the in-between, the ambiguous, the composite." So Kristeva is suggesting that the idea of the abject is anything that disturbs norms and exists between or outside of borders, rules, and so on. Kristeva identifies confronting abjection with being an inherently traumatic experience, typically with things like filth, waste, or corpses, that is upsetting because it was once belonged to a subject, but no longer is or does. So again, filth, waste, corpses, things that were once part of a human but are no longer. We cast out the abject and reject it through rituals. Interestingly, Kristeva states that we cast out the abject in ourselves as well, and identifies one source of abjection as the fact that we are all created by a mother, and we must cast out the maternal to construct our independent identity. Worth noting that I don't know how much, if anything, Kristeva says about fathers. I imagine that because we live in a patriarchal world, that's why the emphasis is on casting out the maternal, not the paternal. Kristeva also makes the point that we are both repulsed by and drawn to the abject. As Wikipedia puts it, to experience the abject in literature carries with it a certain pleasure, but one that is quite different from the dynamics of desire. Kristeva associates this aesthetic experience of the abject rather with poetic catharsis, quote, an impure process that protects from the abject only by dint of being immersed in it, unquote. In essence, there is a pleasure to experiencing the abject through distance, as through literature. There's a catharsis to it. We immerse ourselves in it and address it without being immersed in it. That's something that we're going to discuss more later as we get into horror. So does that make sense so far?
All I can think of is placenta.
Yeah, it's that kind of like...
It's your second birth. I didn't have to experience a second birth, but I had a C-section.
It's something that we have to get out of us. Like... Mm-hmm. And when we're confronted with it, it can be traumatic.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to look at my placenta.
Yeah.
It's gross.
So the other thing I want to introduce is Creed's theory of the monstrous feminine, which is derived...
Creed, interesting that they...
Creed.
They have these thoughts and music.
So Creed's theory of the monstrous feminine is actually derived from Kristeva's idea of the abject. So in Alien and the Monstrous Feminine by Barbara Creed, Creed writes, I have used the term monstrous feminine as... The term female monster implies a simple reversal of male monster. The reasons why the monstrous feminine horrifies her audience are quite different from the reasons why the male monster horrifies his audience. A new term is needed to specify these differences. As with all other stereotypes of the feminine, from virgin to whore, she is defined in terms of her sexuality. The phrase monstrous feminine emphasizes the importance of gender in the construction of her monstrosity. So this is so important in understanding what Creed is talking about. As Creed says, the term monstrous feminine means we're not talking about a simple palette swap, right? Like making, say, Dracula into a woman may do some interesting things to the character, but the horror of that character comes from a different source. A female Dracula, like a female vampire, is scary in a way that male Dracula is not. With Dracula, we may talk about foreignness, the bourgeoisie, etc. But with a female Dracula, we're more likely to talk about sex, seduction, periods, things that may not come to mind at all with the male version of the character. That's the essence of the monstrous feminine.
It's changing the way...
Yeah, the monstrous feminine, which is a hyphenate term that I can't convey through an audio medium. Yes. The monstrous feminine is the quality of monstrousness that stems from femininity, not just a female monster.
Okay, so the monster part of, let's say, the female vampire is the blood that is connected, like a menstrual cycle.
Yeah, like if we're looking at Dracula
mm-hmm.
and the story of Dracula, we might think about, in foreign invaders, we might think about the bourgeoisie. Mm-hmm. If we see a female vampire, we're going to think first of sex and mm-hmm. reproduction and the mm-hmm. fact that she penetrates with her teeth.
Yes.
Those qualities of monstrousness stem directly from her femininity.
Okay.
Whereas we wouldn't apply that to a male vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And very importantly, Creed says, however, I am not arguing that simply because the monstrous feminine is constructed as an active rather than passive figure, that this image is feminist or liberated. I just have to say, she's so fucking right.
Oh, big surprise.
I think we can find all kinds of catharsis or otherwise rewarding stuff when we think about the monstrous feminine, but we also need to understand that agency is not in itself feminist or liberated. We're talking about monsters here. We're often talking about the monstrous feminine as seen and created by men. It's not that it can't be empowering, but rather that these figures are often meant to inspire fear, and we should not give them undue credit for inspiring us, even though they didn't necessarily intend to do stuff. To do so.
I think it's so easy though to see a monstrous female woman or whatever and attack on and yes, when women are often so pushed down and mm-hmm. repressed and you see that. I think it's why a lot of women enjoy true crime and things like mm-hmm. that. They want it's a way for them to take back power. So I can
it's catharsis. It's monstrous feminine.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's empowering.
It doesn't mean it's empowering, but it can be.
It can be empowering to you, but
yes.
But you should still question, like, what is this telling me? Because a lot of the true crime girlies kind of get off on victimhood. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. 100%.
So,
100%.
It's not actually empowering.
No.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No. I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you. I think as an individual, because as I watched this movie and I like the second movie specifically, I did feel like, oh, yeah.
Yes.
We get each other.
Yeah.
Alien, you, me, we are cut from the same cloth.
Yes. If I had to cut the ecofeminism part, but if You do an ecofeminist reading.
I did a whole class on ecofeminism. I can't remember a damn thing about it.
Well, we'll talk about ecofeminism next
Except
time.
for animals are the same.
Yeah. As long as I can work ecofeminism into the rest of it, we'll talk about ecofeminism next time. But if you do an ecofeminist reading of the Alien films, you should be identifying with the alien, right?
Yeah.
She's a victim of colonialism.
Exactly. I do think that you are going to get everything you want out of the TV show.
I'm glad.
I think that all the things that you need to talk about, you're going to be able to.
Thank goodness.
I really liked it. I'm confused by the end.
I've heard good things about it.
It's great. And then the end happens. I'm like, what just happened?
This is another quote from Alien and the Monstrous-Feminine by Barbara Creed. Kristeva argues that historically it has been the function of religion to purify the abject, but with the disintegration of these historical forms of religion, the work of purification now rests solely with, quote, that catharsis par excellence called art. This, I would argue, is also the central ideological project of the popular horror film, purification of the abject through a, quote, descent into the foundations of the symbolic construct. The horror film attempts to bring about a confrontation with the abject, the corpse, bodily wastes, the monstrous feminine, in order finally to eject the abject and redraw the boundaries between the human and non-human. So essentially, Creed suggests that horror films serve a purpose that might have used to be served by religion. Language is hard. The opportunity for us to see, identify, and confront the abject, but still eject and reject it. Let's keep this in mind as we discuss these films, because we should think about what it is exactly that these films may identify as abject and what we are being asked to eject from ourselves when we watch them. Later in the essay, Creed even discusses the language that we use to talk about horror movies, like that scared the shit out of me or that made me sick, both of which are essentially purging the body of something unwanted like waste or illness.
Or placenta.
Or a placenta. So speaking of placenta, let's talk about motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think motherhood is a natural thing to discuss in this franchise, even though it's less a theme in the first film. Motherhood is most seen in Ripley's relationship with the cat, or perhaps in her role as a sort of gatekeeper for the ship, particularly because she isn't taken seriously. But starting in Aliens, which introduced Newt as a surrogate daughter, and again, there is some interesting cut stuff that we're not going to discuss because it's not textual. So for us, Newt is purely a surrogate figure, surrogate daughter figure for no reason. We don't know why. We don't know why Ripley wants to protect this child so bad.
I do. Because she's a woman. I really love this.
I want to complicate that reading.
Yes. I really love, but I do want to say, I really love this. The first one is my favorite just because it is simply just the best made.
Yes.
But the second one makes me feel more. And I just think, how good could it have been if they had one? At least I couldn't find any female writers.
Yeah.
If they just had one female writer, they could have gone one step deeper and it would have just been chef's kiss.
Yeah. So that introduced Newt as a surrogate daughter, and it also introduces the alien queen. So we have a very clear contrasting between Ripley as mother and the alien as mother. Both are mothers, right? But one is clean, pure, untainted by the bodily reality of birth, and the other is a grotesque egg-laying monster.
I see why you said it's going to complicate.
Yeah. Thinking of abjection as the monstrous feminine here, it very much seems like we're trying to cast out the idea of the reality of birth, like the idea that birth itself is grotesque, disgusting, horrific. And like, it kind of is, right?
It isn't kinda, it is.
Yeah.
There's no question.
My notes are just, I'll let Mary talk about birth.
There is no question. Birth is...
And pregnancy.
Terrible. One of the things, so I had a lot of very nice nurses, but there was one nurse and she was good at her job, but she just wasn't, I don't know, I was sitting there and I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. I was sitting there. I didn't know I had to at the time. And my daughter's heart was going up and down. And my doctor was about to come in. And I said something to the nurse about like, oh, the trauma of this. And she was just like, this is not trauma. She's like, giving birth is not traumatic. And I looked at her, I go, yes, it is.
It's not traumatic to have something tear you open
or get cut open. It like just because something is trauma doesn't mean it can't be, like, it can be beautiful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's still fucking trauma. It's still, if not trauma to your head, it's trauma to your body. It's literally trauma to your body. So I got so frustrated when she said that. She also came in. So for those who don't know, when you have a C-section, it might be when you have a vaginal birth as well, but when you have a C-section, there'll be a point where they come in, then they come in and they have to push on your stomach to try and get all the extra blood out of you. She did not warn me. And I don't know. It was horrible pain. Imagine having 7 layers of your skin cut open, a child and placenta taken out of it, and then someone coming in without telling you, pushing on your stomach to get as much blood out of you as possible. So yeah, that was traumatic, lady.
Yeah.
That was traumatic. It's disgusting. It's horrible. And you know what? She shit inside me. It made it even worse. It was even more disgusting. That's why I had to have an emergency C-section. Like, there is no question. It can be beautiful. But when you get down to it, it is disgusting.
Right.
Most people shit when they have a vaginal birth. Most people shit when they have a vaginal birth. I'm so sorry. That's why you should eat, like, conservatively. Anyways, most people shit when they give birth.
So true.
I didn't shit. My kid just did.
Yeah. She took care of that for you. So even if we agree that, and like we do agree that birth is disgusting, scary, we need to be cognizant of the fact that, yes, it's disgusting, it's scary. It's not monstrous. It doesn't make you monstrous to give birth, right? The qualities of disgust that we feel from birth do not make you a monster for doing it.
No, but I will push back a little bit. So everyone's heard about like postpartum depression, right? But there's also postpartum anxiety and postpartum rage. Mm-hmm. So there is a part of you that can become not forever, but can become monstrous in that. But that's uncontrolled rage.
The thing, though, to me, is that's very different because it's not a quality of monstrousness imposed by society. We're not calling you an other. You know what I mean? There's a difference between the quality of disgust that we feel toward the alien queen than that we should feel toward a human mother for experiencing a chemical change that causes her brain to react in different ways. I do not think that a woman experiencing postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety or any kind of postpartum mental health situation is a monster.
I don't either, but I definitely think that people... So here's women who kill their children. Mm-hmm. Many of them are dealing with postpartum depression, anxiety, and rage. Is that not a type of a monster? And no one gives them any...
That's what I'm saying. I don't feel that way. We as a world,
yes,
should not feel that that's monstrous. We should provide the support to make that not a possibility.
Even suggesting that will get you yelled at.
Well, I don't give a shit.
People who kill their children will never, ever have the sympathy. And when you do show the sympathy... I saw someone one time who showed the sympathy of this, postpartum, we need more help. And she was ripped to shreds.
I don't give a shit about those people, and I think they're monstrous.
Yes, but from a society point of view, I do think that I do think it can make you monstrous.
Yeah. My issue here is that this, like, birth being disgusting or scary does not make a person who gives birth a monster.
A monster in an as is other. Yes. Okay.
We may view them that way, but there is no quality of evil to it.
There's no objectively, like, you now have a claw for a head.
Yeah, there's no connection between the disgust that we may feel toward birth and any sort of evil attachment to it, which is the kind of thing that we're applying to the alien. Because the way they give birth is so disgusting and horrifying to us, they are monstrous.
I just have a hard time.
We cannot and should not apply that to human beings.
We shouldn't, but I think that I guess it depends on, like, if I'm looking at it as a society point of view, we absolutely do.
Yes.
If I'm looking
and that's part of my point.
Yeah. If I'm looking at an objective point of view as, like, sitting out high, like sitting outside of this and looking at it as factual, then yes, it does not make you a monster.
I believe that. I think any reasonable person, and I'm sorry if this doesn't apply to you as a listener, I think any reasonable person who thinks about a postpartum mental health condition should conclude that mothers need support and mental health treatment. And that is
until they kill their children.
Well, that's the thing is, you know how you prevent them from killing their children? With support,
so
safety nets.
It's true, because even those who don't, there's some really funny, like, reels I've seen of things where it's like they hold like a baby doll to show this. It's like, mom walking down the stairs. Oh, threw the baby down the stairs. Oh, mom's cooking dinner. Oh no, it's in the oven. Like, these are things like the
intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, the intrusive thoughts. I mean, I've had many people have had those intrusive thoughts. This is why we are not good at having children. Like, this is why we're not designed well. Like, why would I have the, oh, what if I just threw my kid out the door, like into the traffic? Like, that is, it happens in a lot of people's brains, and the fact that we don't, and a lot of women are afraid of saying something because they end up hospitalized.
Right.
And we don't have the structure to have a good experience of that.
And that's precisely my issue, is the idea that, like, we view that as monstrous, but we're not doing anything about, we're just trying to punish the behavior, not end the...
Or call it baby blues.
Yeah, like, come on.
Bullshit.
My point being, giving birth does not make you monstrous. No matter how disgusting it is, it doesn't make you monstrous. And the fact that the movie does categorize it as such, even if it is an inhuman way of giving birth, i.e. eggs, parasitism, etc., that should give us some degree of pause, especially for a film as widely praised for its representation of women, aka one woman, as this one.
I agree with you, but as like an individual, I see power in that. So I agree with what you're saying. But as I watch this movie, that's not how I feel.
About Ripley or about the alien?
The alien.
Because I'm talking about Ripley.
Oh, I'm talking about the alien.
I know you're talking about the alien. I know you're talking about the alien.
I don't really relate to Ripley.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't either. This movie is a fucking mystery to me.
Like, I'm watching this movie and I get like Motherhood and stuff, but that's not when I watch this movie and like and thinking about things and really like I looked up. None
of Alien has fucking anything to do with me. Nothing in this franchise is about me.
This is what I said in our chat. I didn't finish Aliens last night because I was afraid I'd get too scared. But turns out I was fucking right. I related to the alien. What a great movie about being a mom. And when I say being a mom, I didn't mean Ripley.
Right.
So it's interesting.
For me, I'm talking about Ripley.
Okay.
People praise Ripley and her.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't think that we should have some degree of pause for the connection between this like grotesque means of giving birth.
You're saying. 100%.
Yeah. So this is a quote from What's the Story, Mother? The Morning of the Alien by Stephen Scobie, who writes, "The image is presented with clear echoes of childbirth." This is about the chestburster scene. "The sudden onset of pains, the thrashing around on the table, the crew members trying to hold him down, even a parody of the infant's first cry as the creature bares its teeth and hisses defiance. Indeed, it is birth itself which is seen as monstrous, as a fearsome, bloody, inexplicable extrusion of the alien within. That this is, I would suggest, a very male fantasy, that is, a male fear of the mystery and unknown of women's power. Certainly, it was the perverse fascination of this scene which, more than any other single factor, accounted for the popularity or notoriety of Alien, and variations on it have continued to be a trademark of the series." Again, I think this is probably truthful representation of birth. It is scary. It can be surprising. Like, you're going to give birth, but you also don't know when. It's kind of a ticking time bomb.
Unless you're induced, yeah.
Unless you're induced, right? Like, we had planned to work on the nursery for the baby on one weekend. And that happened to be the weekend that Mary went into labor. So Mary's like actively like doing her labor breathings while we're upstairs painting the nursery.
I'm screaming and like trying to decide if it's time to go because my water hadn't broken. And there's upstairs painting.
We're upstairs like dancing around to Chapel Row and like
and I'm doing an impression of Men.
And Mary's downstairs doing an impression of the movie Men. So I think this representation through the chestburster scene of birth is, it's probably truthful, it's scary, it's surprising, it's painful. But what do we make of it being applied to a male body? As Scobie points out here, this can be seen as a quote-unquote male fantasy because it reflects a, quote, male fear of the mystery and unknown of women's power. And I agree with this to a certain extent. The use of male bodies as sites of rape and birth, something that we'll talk about more later, is interesting. And Ronald Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, who are the writers of Alien, wanted to use a male victim because a female victim might become eroticized by the camera, which would miss the point of the violation, right? If we're going to talk about rape and carrying a child conceived by rape to term, like, if we put that on a woman's body, we're going to view that very differently.
Yeah, it's going to become overtly sexual in a very specific way.
Exactly.
Female.
Yes.
Female sexualized.
The point is not for it to be sexy, right? It's meant to be violating. It's meant to be horrific. And at that, I think the film succeeds. We can say the same about the depiction of birth. Obviously, birth isn't exactly like that. Generally, the baby does not kill the person birthing it as an essential part of birth.
Well, in the United States, our maternal rate is really high.
Yeah. But it's not as a part of birth. It's a consequence, not the host does not have to die.
If it were up to the child, they probably
maybe.
would. They want to kill themselves so hard. Probably want to kill the mom too.
But there are many similar elements, right? The violation, the violence, the blood, even to a certain degree, the parasitism of carrying a child, right?
Not to a certain degree.
Well, I mean, a certain degree of comparison to the chest burster.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It is a parasite in you. It is literally feeding off of you and making you weaker.
Right.
That is a parasite.
Yeah. But the male fantasy bit that Scobie mentions is still a little like, I think a lot of people experience birth as a beautiful and magical and so on, but not everybody. Birth can also be scary and traumatic and violent. There's a truth to Alien's depiction that I do think gets glossed over in maybe most depictions of birth, which, yeah, usually contains screaming and sweating and blood and so on, but usually also make it very quick. And they never talk about the recovery, right?
I was in labor for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then I got cut open.
Yeah. It is worth noting here that there is, from my understanding, a sort of chemical thing that makes you mentally sort of gloss over the experience yourself if you give birth, but still.
I looked that up and there's no real, there's no concrete data, but also data on women is not the best.
Nobody has, maybe they haven't studied it yet.
Yes. And well, there have been a few studies and they haven't been able to pinpoint it, but there probably needs to be more. I can tell from my experience, I don't remember a lot of it. I remember doing it, but I don't remember like screaming the pain and stuff. I couldn't tell you how painful it was. I can tell you how painful, and let me preface this for anyone who's pregnant or going to get pregnant. This is not the typical experience. My epidural was the worst part. I don't know what was wrong with my spine. He's asked me if I had scoliosis. It was a horrible, bloody. My mom had to leave the room. I can remember that. I can remember begging them to stop, but I can't remember the contractions. So I believe
at least anecdotally,
say, that they don't and that makes sense on an evolution.
Well, and even on just a basic trauma level, I can't recount the details of every traumatic thing that happened to me. I know the general shape of it. I also know that in a traumatic experience, I dissociate. So there's also that, right?
Yeah. But let me tell you that epidural, ooh, when it hits good. It hits real good.
So, there's this potential thing that happens in your brain when you give birth, but still, I would love it if that was in the movie too. I would love it if that guy had survived for only a bit to be like, what's going on, guys?
What's going on, guys?
Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Anyway, my point here is that I think Scobie's idea of this as a male fantasy is not wrong per se. It very literally is that, as pretty much everybody involved in the construction of the chestburster scene was male. But also, how fantastical is it? Is it possible that the men who constructed this scene were onto something about the potential horror and trauma of childbirth, particularly as outsiders? I'm sorry to be here on this podcast defending men again, but apparently that is my lot in life, to defend fucking
That's your brand.
Wuthering Heights and men. Not the movie. I won't defend that one. This is not to say that these men know birth better than a woman.
No.
That would be a silly ass thing to say. But in the 1970s, when Alien came out, there simply weren't a lot of female directors getting the kind of budgets this team was getting to make an Alien film.
Imagine if they had a woman.
Imagine if they had a woman.
At this time, let's see. I believe, at this time, men weren't even in the room when women were giving birth. Because my grandpa, it
came out in 79.
Yeah,
so.
the first time. So maybe the first time he was ever in the hospital room when someone gave him birth with me. He wasn't in the room with any of his children.
Right.
But they were born in, my mom I think was born in the 70s. Anyways.
At the very least, it was probably new.
Yes.
So again, my point here is not that actually men did a great job depicting birth here, so much as it is this idea of it as a male fantasy. I think this is written by a man. This essay is written by a man calling it a male fantasy. I'm Stephen Scobie, I don't think you've given birth either. I'm here with a real live woman who's given birth. Maybe Stephen Scobie's wife if he had a wife.
I would assume
had a
that
great
they
time.
probably, hopefully, talked to some women.
Yeah. But I don't know, This is another quote from the same essay. What's the story, Mother? The Morning of the Alien by Stephen Scobie. At the film's climax, Ripley and the Queen battle each other for the possession of Newt as Ripley addresses to her foe the film's most famous line of dialogue: "Stay away from her, you bitch." Again, the patterns of transsexual identification are very revealing. This line was cheered to the echo by movie audiences, again, mostly young males. The sexism of bitch was, as it were, neutralized by the fact that the line was spoken by a woman. Its connotations, a bitch and heat, etc., are of sexual promiscuity and excessive reproduction. The queen alien plopping down the dozens of eggs and producing indiscriminate offspring is contrasted to the obsessive singularity of Ripley's attachment to Newt. So,
okay, but let me just say, she still fucking killed the alien's kids.
Right.
So, she has every right to be angry. I'm just saying.
The alien has every right to be angry.
The alien has every fucking right to be angry.
You are, intentionally or not, doing an eco-feminist reading of Alien.
I just relate to that alien so much.
So my thing with this is I have to say I'm of so many minds about the "stay away from her, you bitch" line. Because on the one hand, kind of badass, right? Probably a realistic thing to shout when a big alien is preying on your surrogate child. And look, I'm a 37-year-old woman in 2026. Bitch does not hold the same cultural baggage that it did for people, especially women in the 70s and 80s and so on. Obviously, there are many ways to use the word, and some of them make me mad, and I don't want to be called a bitch by a stranger. But I'm also not as affected by the word as people of the past might have been, right? That's just a simple fact.
I think, go ahead.
If a stranger calls me a bitch, I'm going to be pissed off.
It feels neutral at this point.
But I call my friends bitches. I call myself a bitch. Yeah. It's just, to me, the term has been somewhat neutralized, but that still doesn't give strangers the right to use it against me.
I don't know if it was neutralized back then, though.
That's the thing, is I don't think it was.
And here's my...
Scobie says that the film tries to neutralize it by having it come out of the mouth of a woman.
I don't know if that's true. I wouldn't say neutralize. I would say because it comes out of a woman's mouth, people feel justified in oh yeah, bitch.
Exactly.
Like they can say it now.
100%.
Yes. That's how I feel. I feel like when a woman does something bad, we now have many people in the public be like, oh, now I can really show how much I hate women.
Yes.
And I feel like that to me, because it came out of a woman, it's okay.
Exactly.
So now I can say it. I can say
bitch because in this case, because I knew it was bad before, but Ripley said it first.
Ripley said it. I'm just agreeing with a woman.
Yeah.
I'm just agreeing with a woman. That fucking bitch.
Right.
And I think people want to be able to say that. Not that people back then probably were even stopping themselves from saying it, but the catharsis of being like, I hate women so much, and now even this other woman is justifying it. Yeah.
So that said, again, Scobie is onto something here with who gets to cheer for and repeat it. It's okay to say bitch in this context because our hero, Ripley, says it. That means it's okay for the audience to say it too, right? And we can ignore all the connotations of bitch that go beyond mean woman, because that's what it's really about, right? It's really about the fact that she's a mean woman, right? Obviously not. And again, we should return we should return to the idea of abjection and the Monstrous-Feminine here. Ripley is not a bitch. Ripley is a good mother. Her birth is not grotesque. In fact, it doesn't take place at all. The alien's birth is disgusting, goopy, bloody, inhuman. She's the bitch because she's stealing Ripley's pure child, but also because of the gratuitousness of her procreation, how gross and nasty and repellent it is. And look, there is an element of class and race here, right? The white woman with her pure child versus the literally black quote-unquote creature with its unchecked reproduction. We talked about this quite a bit in our episode on Jurassic Park, so I don't want to go too deep into it here, but there are very real associations between blackness, poverty, and we'll go with prolific reproductions in our cultural history, and it's deeply gross and racist and classist. I don't think the Alien franchise is trying to point toward the alien as some kind of metaphor for black women or anything. That feels like a pretty big reach. But it's still worth questioning our association between blackness, literal in this case, but also metaphorical. It's worth questioning the association between blackness, evil, reproduction, and so on. Especially because of how well this movie embodies the idea of abjection. If we do take a moment to read the Alien franchise as an unintentional metaphor for our culture's racist understanding of black women, then it becomes clear that understanding of black women is abject to us, that it must be cast out, and racial marginalization is also part of Kristeva's concept of the abject. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Also, Our Jurassic Park episode is one of my favorites.
Our Jurassic Park episode is good. In Monstrous Mothers, Medusa, Grendel, and Now Alien by Linda K. Bunsen, Bunsen discusses how when Ripley and co. discover Newt, she's brought to the marine doctor, who is also a woman. The doctor says that Newt is fine and does what needs to be done, but Ripley is the one to clean Newt's face and the one who ultimately gets Newt to speak. Bunsen points out that this shows that being maternal is not an inherent condition of womanhood. Otherwise, that would have happened. Like the doctor who examines her would also feel this intense maternal instinct. And Bunsen says Ripley chooses to mother. She is not programmed as female by nature to nurture others. Now, interestingly, compare that to the alien. She reproduces, she protects her eggs, but I do not know that she mothers, right? So again, the maternal instinct is not innate, which I think is actually a more progressive take on motherhood and even being a woman than I would expect from this movie.
She clearly, I think the alien still wants justice for the children that she killed.
It's hard to say because we don't get to see the alien's internal thought
but
process.
she's like, I'm not going to kill your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the alien's like, okay, go.
Mm-hmm.
And then she kills her kids and she's like, well, now I'm coming after you.
But it's hard to know whether that is like, because we don't know how. I know this later, this is complicated with the idea that they have language and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But from specifically the context of the film Aliens, we don't know if she is reacting to violence with violence or if she is actively getting revenge.
I definitely took it as revenge.
And I think that's a fair reading, but we don't have textual evidence that it's revenge.
So you're saying it could just be just violence for violence sake?
Yes.
But then why would she say, okay, go?
But she doesn't say, okay, go.
She says, I'm not going to kill your kids. And
no,
then
but the alien cannot speak to Ripley.
Sure. But I think it's pretty clear the alien's like, all right, I'll let you go because you're not going to kill my kids.
I think there's an understanding there, but I also think that, like, the alien does not mother in the way that...
Definitely. But I think, but I would say in more of like, many animals don't mother in the same way. Many animals. So I that's how I connected of
especially like insects.
Yeah. You have this like, evolutionary design to protect the thing that you've created, not necessarily to mother.
Any creature that gives birth to a form that is like capable of protecting itself does not have the instinct to mother, essentially, from a biological perspective. Biology is more complicated than that. But like mammals, for example, give birth to creatures that are not ready. Mm-hmm. They're not ready to come out yet. So we have more of a mothering instinct, and that's like commonly why mammal babies tend to be cute, because we look at them and we go, oh, I want to protect that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe a face hugger is really cute if you're an alien, if you're a xenomorph. But I also think that face huggers are pretty good at protecting themselves, all things considered. So they don't need mothering. But
I see what you're saying. I don't know if I'm on the aspect of like mothering. I agree, but on the
but you're suggesting that there's like a protectiveness of the eggs
of the eggs, and I created that, and my child is inside of that. It's not necessarily like I'm going to lose a life with my child.
I guess, is it the child that she's protecting, or is it the eggs? Like, is the alien cognizant of the fact that there's a child in those eggs?
I think so.
Or is her biological imperative to?
I don't know. I don't think that we know, but I think so.
You think so?
I do think so. I think that alien's not stupid. Like
I agree. I don't think the alien is stupid, but I don't know what the movie is trying to say.
In the way I see it is there is an inherent instinct to protect offspring. Mm-hmm. That instinct is not motherhood. Motherhood is something different. Like, it is something different.
So I don't think like a chicken protects its eggs, but I don't know. I don't know a lot about chickens.
If like a fox comes, it will attack. Or
but is it the rooster that will? Or because like
no,
rooster,
I don't think so.
Is it the hen?
But I don't have chickens, so I don't know. I think it's the hens, either. But I'm basing this off of television, so I cannot tell you for sure. Run. Yeah, the movie Chicken Run. I actually just like.
I also don't like that.
I don't like the animation. But I think there is like this evolutionary like design to protect this because like this is
at least in this case of the xenomorphs, because like there's plenty of creatures that lay eggs and then just fuck off.
I don't want to, and I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying there's to protect the egg. So I guess you're right when you say, is it the egg or is it what's inside? The design of like, I protect this nest. I protect this egg. And
birds do this.
Yes.
I don't know about chickens, but birds do.
Yes. So I think there is at least that of like, I'm getting revenge because you attacked this thing that I hold to me as a part of me, and evolutionary design, science saying, it's the science of aliens, of saying, you fucked with me, I'll fuck with you. But the you're drawing a clear boundary here between what I said, which is motherhood, yes,
and what you're saying, which is protectiveness.
Yes.
Protectiveness might be a feature of motherhood, but like different from the kind of mothering that we see Ripley do to a non-biological child of hers.
Yes. I think that there's two different there's a difference there. I think she's getting revenge for the aliens' eggs being killed. I think there is an instinct of like, these are my children, but I don't think that means that the alien queen is going to a mother to, we know that really kind of, I guess we don't know, but we can make a pretty good jump that she isn't sitting there breastfeeding the babies. I keep saying she because that's how I see it. So I'm not agreeing that it's a woman, but that is in my mind. I just want to make that clear.
I do think that that's how it's constructed. I think we're meant to read the alien as female.
Yes.
It just so happens that I find a more compelling reading to be, we don't know what the fuck that is.
Yes, I agree. And I don't think it's that big of a deal like people want to make it be. But that is, because I relate to this movie, that is how I see it. Yeah.
So, like I said, the maternal instinct, the desire to mother aliens, the film suggests, is not innate, which I think is a more progressive take on motherhood and even being a woman than I would expect, especially as a person who does not want to be a mother. That said, in Monstrous Mothers, again, Medusa, Grendel, and Now Alien by Linda K. Bunsen, Bunsen writes, therefore, despite a wish to praise this revision of mothering as a cultural choice, a humanizing and civilizing impulse that makes Ripley heroic, I cannot. Because simultaneously, I want to ask why the female body must be represented with such primal terror, such intense repugnance, and why it needs to be so resoundingly defeated, sucked into the vacuum of space as if thrown back into whatever imaginative void could have germinated such horror. If the terrors of the film are, as I've tried to indicate, grounded in archetypal fears of women's otherness, her alien body and its natural functions, no amount of physical abuse, firepower, and nuclear explosions will provide an audience with psychological catharsis. This is the final horror of the film. There is no reassurance in its closing images of Ripley and Newt sleeping peacefully in their capsules. They look like Snow White. Ripley has earlier been sarcastically dubbed Snow White by the fiery Vasquez for her frigidity. Whose female sexuality may be awakened by a kiss, unleashing the power of the alien other yet again. One might even recall here the other sleeping females of the film, the quiescent lab specimens drifting in liquid sleep, but ready to strike when the glass tube shatters. So, despite this interesting characterization of motherhood as not innate, as coming in many forms, etc., I think what Bunsen sort of gets at here without saying it explicitly is that the film series never gets outside of the idea of mother, birth, womanhood as abject. Honestly, especially when we get into Alien Resurrection, primarily because Joss Whedon just cannot help but make a woman fuckable to him by giving her quote unquote masculine traits and putting her in leather pants. I think it only leans into these things as abject. The alien is constantly being sucked out a window or being cast out through Ripley's death or whatever. But the potential for the monstrous feminine is always there, lurking in Ripley's body, in Newt's body, in the aliens themselves, etc. The monstrous feminine is always present in the female body. The male body, on the other hand, gets to cast it out, right? Yes, it may die in the process, but the male body is never seen as harboring a secret threat inside of it.
The very first time. Because they don't know. And that's it.
They don't know, but he, like I said, he gets to cast it out.
Yeah,
yes,
he
dies.
To cast it out.
He dies in the process. We should not overlook the fact that he does die in the process. However, he does get to cast it out.
Yes.
And no other man's body is seen as suspect, even in Alien 3. Even in Alien 3, when they are rapists, their bodies are not seen as suspect.
No.
So on that note, let's talk about masculinity. As I mentioned earlier, because we live in a patriarchal society, any depiction of something like the monstrous feminine is also, in its way, a discussion of masculinity. Because the thing is, with the alien films we're looking at, the alien films we're looking at are media primarily created by men, and men talking about women is also men talking about men, because women are the other. Women are abject. So let's take a look at what these movies are saying about masculinity. So in Alien Within, Aliens Without, the primal scene in The Return to the Repressed by Ilsa J. Bick discusses how the alien, which Bick identifies as he, because she's talking specifically about Alien, just the first movie. She calls the alien he. And Bick says he obliterates his male rivals one by one. She states that the alien goes from the weakest member of the crew to the most hypermasculine, which she identifies as Parker, who is burly, has a mustache, and is black. Bick states that the alien grows more powerful the more men it kills. Now, Bick is viewing the alien as a male here, which I don't think is an incorrect interpretation of the first film in isolation, and does give us an interesting read of this film as like male violence through domination, right? The lowest male, the face hugger, violates and kills his way to the top, and we only appreciate this level of violence because it is perpetrated on male bodies. If the alien were violating if the alien were violating female bodies, that would be par for the course. We're used to seeing men violate female bodies.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
But because...
We're expecting it. Especially in this environment of this movie and what it's saying, yeah.
Absolutely. And in regard to like, well, yeah, it makes sense that a female body would be forcibly impregnated. That happens all the time in fiction. It's literally my fucking nightmare.
But now we got Mpreg.
But now we've got and shout out to Alien 1979 for Mpreg.
The beginning, as far as we know, of Mpreg.
No, I'm pretty sure Mpreg's got to at least go back to the Star Trek
cavemen.
The cavemen were drawing Mpreg. Anyway. So in that way, there's a really interesting examination of masculinity here that is only possible because the victims are men. That said, as the franchise goes on, particularly into Aliens, critics increasingly refer to the alien as female. I can see why they don't in the original, especially given that the alien does a lot of penetrating.
And you don't see the alien as much.
Right.
Which is what I really
And what you do
about
see
it.
is quite phallic.
Yep.
So I think there's a sound reading that Bick offers here that becomes even more interesting when we apply it to the later films. Does the alien in its earlier forms, Chestburster, for example, represent something masculine or feminine? Which is more horrifying to the audience? If we view the alien as masculine, we get an interesting reading of domination among men. If we read the alien as feminine, we have an interesting reading of what men fear. A feminine figure treating men the way that men have historically treated women.
That's more fun.
That's certainly more fun.
And more horrible for men.
Yes.
Like the horror of it.
Yes. And then now the question is, how much credit can we give the filmmakers for this? Are they?
I would love to know.
I would love to know.
I would call them up. I truly
Ridley,
would like
get
to
on
know.
the phone.
I really would like to know, because it's one of those questions of, did you do this on purpose or do you live in a society?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So on that note, this is a quote from Alien as Abortion Parable by John L. Cobbs, who writes, "By this time, the creature has assumed its final form. No more a gelatinous ooze, a slithering amniotic and amorphous fetal being, or a curvy blob, but a distinctly masculine reptile with jaws and claws and an obscenely phallic thrusting quote-unquote member that runs in and out of its slavering mouth in an unmistakably copulatory and invariably fatal piston-like action."
That is my favorite description.
Go off, John
ever.
L. Cobbs.
Oh my God.
I think I had to, I'm interrupting my own quote to say that I had to cut this quote, but like I saw the most incredible description of my entire life, which was one of these essays was describing the alien as having a penis, like a phallic and a vaginal appearance. And the writer chose to use the Latin word cum, meaning like with, to say that it was a penis cum vagina, which when you're reading it says penis cum vagina. And I was like,
that had to have been on purpose.
I'm like, I love that you did this. Anyway, talking about the slavering mouth, et cetera, et cetera. For a time, the creature's survival is pleaded by the technological panderer Ash, who speaks for quote-unquote mother, first begging Ripley not to destroy the monster, then attacking her physically in an effort to save the fledgling horror, which he admires for the quote perfection of its hostility. Ripley, however, now realizes the inevitable fatality of delivering the creature, and she is determined to reject Mother's command. She destroys Ash in a battle in which he attempts to impale her orally on a rolled copy of Playboy. Then she expels the creature from the body of her space pod, having it sucked out by the vacuum of space. Again, we have the identification of the alien as masculine here, specifically phallic, including its member in its mouth. And I agree with that. But as I mentioned earlier, I think there's something more interesting going on with the creature design, which is an intentional blurring of the line between masculine and feminine. You have the phallic nature of the head and the member and the way the tail of the facehugger enters the throat. But you also have the way that the facehugger looks very vaginal, especially when it's being dissected, and the amount of slime they produce, which, I don't know, man, that looks like vaginal lubricant to me.
Even the title screen, like, vagina. I mean, it's there. It's there and it's intentional.
Yes. Anyway, the other important part of this quote is that Ash, who is not technically a man, being a synthetic human, is still nonetheless positioned as a man. And interestingly, a man serving a matriarch in the form of Mother. And he attacks her with a Playboy magazine, a symbol of male voyeurism and exploitation of women. He shoves it down her throat in a mockery of oral sex, essentially saying, choke on the exploitation of women. It's a crazy loaded scene. I bet when he wrote it, he's just like, hey, this is good. I really do something here. And he was. Yeah. Ash is far and away the worst man in the film, and he's not even technically a man in the way that the others are. I would argue that Ash is worse than the alien, if we consider the alien to be a man. The alien is just trying to survive and bears no ill will toward the humans, at least not as far as we know.
It's just a baby.
It's just a baby. In Masochism and Representation in Modern Horror, the case of Alien 3 by Celestino Deleto Alcala, Alcala discusses the idea of sadistic theories of the cinematic gaze, which is the power of looking from a control and domination perspective. He states that this idea of the sadistic cinematic gaze goes beyond wanting to possess the object into wanting to punish it, to fetishize it, and ultimately to incorporate or introject it. The film encourages us to identify with Ripley, but it also encourages us to look at Ripley. And we see this especially close to the end of the movie when she's in her underwear, in a way that positions us as the monster, right? To be looking at Ripley when she's at her most vulnerable, when she's about to go to sleep in her underwear. Who are we there? We are watching her as the alien.
It's interesting because as a woman, I feel like we feel like this is weird. But as men, I'm curious how many people are like, oh, this is kind of weird.
One of them. One man watching that movie thought that. And it was Celestino Deleto Alcala. So shout out to you. Because
it was weird.
Yeah.
Also, I think this has nothing to do with anything. I'm the only person on Earth just simply, that does not think Ripley is straight. I know I'm a straight woman, but I was like, I don't think she's pretty. She's pretty, but like, I'm not like, oh, super hot lady. Mm-hmm. I asked my husband, I said, he's like, yeah, she's super hot. I'm like, what am I not seeing here? Is it just her in her underwear?
No, it's not. It's her in that jumpsuit. Like, don't get me wrong.
It's not the underwear, it's the jumpsuit.
Don't get me wrong. Like, she looks good in the underwear, but it's the jumpsuit. Anyway. Alcala also states that this film is, quote, ambiguously the embodiment of the most profound desire, a desire of fusion with the mother, of refusal of separation between self and other. So it's really interesting to think about this exactly because of how Ripley is constructed as both our point of view character and our audience insert character. Obviously, we would never be so stupid as to let the weird alien on the ship, right?
I have a question. Is it really audience insert when you make her a woman?
Well, that's the thing. And this is something that comes up in, and I'll talk about it a bit later.
At least in 2.
Yeah. Clover's Men, Women, and Chainsaws is where we get the idea of the final girl. And I'll talk about this later, but the barest minimum here is that the final girl has to be a woman because we cannot otherwise look at a person screaming and identify with her. So she must be a woman, but she also must appropriate masculinity in order to succeed over the threat.
So hold on. She has to be a woman screaming so we don't identify with her?
So that the presumed male audience, because the presumed male audience would not want to see themselves represented as fearful.
I see.
So she has to be a woman so that she can be afraid. But in the end, she will appropriate the whatever
masculine
tool of violence is used, a pistol, a knife, something appropriately phallic. In this case, it is interesting though, because they're always getting sucked out of things.
That is true.
So, you know,
it's not that they're using it's not the suction, it's the space doing the suction. So maybe, I don't know, voids.
We're all getting sucked off by space, aren't we?
To jail. Straight to jail.
So Ripley is constructed as both our point of view audience insert character because obviously we would never be so stupid as to let the weird alien on the ship, right? We would never make that stupid decision.
Well, Ripley didn't want to either.
That's the thing, is that's why she's our audience insert, is because we see ourselves in there being like, how stupid are you? Well, the thing is that the other characters of the movie don't know that they're in the film Alien 1979, directed by Ridley Scott.
I think it is interesting to look at it as an audience insert, because when we, in present day, in the past 10, 15, 20 years, men specifically have a hard time with putting women as leads. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you will see on the internet specifically, like, I just don't want them shoehorned in. I don't want to. And then when you say, well, try to give me examples of a female lead that wasn't shoehorned, whatever, it's always Ripley and Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting that I feel like men must be able to feel like a self-insert with Ripley, or else I don't feel like they would have said that. Yeah. I feel like there is something there, and it can't just be that she's hot, because these other female leads are hot too.
Yeah.
So maybe it was because
Sarah Connor is especially hot.
Yeah. Maybe it was that she wasn't written as a woman at first, but eventually she is written as a woman.
Well, you know what she doesn't have in Alien and Aliens?
A penis.
Presumably. I haven't seen it.
I guess you're right. When she's in I feel like we'd see it in the underwear. We'd
probably see it in the underwear, but that's some pretty...
It's
you see a lot.
Yeah.
What she doesn't have is a love interest.
Well, until
3,
which I'm just gonna ignore.
Yeah. So we don't have
the alien,
but we don't ever have to see her in a flirtatious relationship with a man. So the male audience never has to reject that part of him. I think that's part of why Ripley.
I think that's fair.
I think that's part of why Ripley.
Man, I really want us to watch. We gotta watch Alien vs Predator.
We could do a bonus episode on Alien vs Predator.
Talk about relationships with aliens.
So she is both this point of view audience insert character and an object of, as Mulvey stated in the cinematic pleasure, visual pleasure, and I can't remember what it's called, but the one about the male gaze, where that comes from. She called it the quality of to be looked atness, right? The main quality is to be looked at. I do think this is true of most movies with a female protagonist. So it's not necessarily unique to Alien, but it is nonetheless interesting. Alcala goes on to say that Alien 3 constructs the relationship between femininity and the monster itself as abject, and that particular space is where the spectator inhabits, that feeling of abjectness between femininity and the monster. The spectator, presumed male, gets to explore this sense of abjection, which Alcala calls a fantastic regression to the imaginary state from which his individuality and his male identity have stemmed. Basically, what this means is that the presumed male viewer gets to use abjection to better understand himself, what makes him him because of what he is casting out. No matter how potentially feminist we might read this film, we're stuck with it also being a film about casting out the other, and that other is femininity and monstrousness. Whatever else might be going on there, there's a disidentification with womanhood, right?
You're talking about all of them or just a third?
All of them.
Okay.
We, as women in the audience, might find something powerful that resonates with us, but it was never really about us, right? It is about...
Or they would have hired a woman.
It is about men's relationship to femininity and to monstrousness. Mm-hmm. And it is about casting that out. The fact that the main character is a woman allows them to explore that space and reject the uncomfortable bits. That's that sense of abjection.
It allows them to call a woman a bitch.
And it allows them to call a woman a bitch, right? Mm-hmm. It sets Ripley up as...
Or a female a bitch. I don't know if you can call her female, but I don't know if we can go so far as woman.
Right. It's... Again, the point for me here is whatever else is going on, there is a disidentification with womanhood, and we, as women in the audience, may find something powerful that resonates with us, whether it's identification with the alien, identification with Ripley, identification with, I don't know, the fucking spaceship. It doesn't matter. Like, it's never about us. Or, as you said...
It wasn't created for women. It was created for thriller and horror fans who, in the 70s, were not... typically seen as women.
Yes.
Even now, you see a woman who's like, oh, I'm really into horror. It's not like, it is very common, but it is not portrayed as common or something like, oh, as if you would think that a woman likes rom-coms or something.
A female horror fan is a specific kind of person in the general like the general imagination.
Yeah.
Right. She's probably some kind of cool alt girl.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, a female horror fan can look like. And when you think about female horror.
Yeah, I was just about to say female horror looks different.
It looks different. You have stuff like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which is a fantastic movie. You have
even Jennifer's Body.
You have Coralie Farjat, who I don't even like, but The Substance and Revenge. Like
Ginger Snaps.
Ginger Snaps.
Ugh, Ginger Snaps.
All of these things look and feel different. And they can be part of horror, but they're also a subgenre of horror, essentially.
They're a genre of horror that only people who experience being a woman can truly make.
Well, like, I don't think Ginger Snaps was made by a woman.
Is it not?
I don't think so.
No way.
It's a 2-person team, and it's the people who created Orphan Black, and I think one of them is at least is a man. I'm not sure about the other.
They should get them to write lots of stuff.
They know what's up.
Oh, that was so good.
What I think one of them at least is a man. I don't know if they both are.
A screenplay is a woman.
Okay. So this is another quote from Masochism and Representation in Modern Horror, The Case of Alien 3 by Celestino Deleto Alcala, who writes, "This looking away may well be compared to the position of the spectator at certain moments in horror films when she or he is, according to Creed, unable to stand the images unfolding in front of her or his eyes. Quote, pleasure in looking is transformed into pain as the spectator is punished for his or her voyeuristic desires. Of course, Creed is referring to the spectator, whereas I am referring to Ripley, the fictional character, but the spectator is bound here in an identification with the heroine, which makes him, like her, confront the abject and be punished for desiring it. This punishment carries with it the possibility of rejection of that desire and reintegration into the symbolic. Reintegration is possible for the male spectator precisely because the victim is represented as female. According to Clover, he can, after experiencing the pain/pleasure of a masochistic fantasy of humiliation, coupled in this case with a fantasy of incorporation of the abject, disavow his personal stake since the victim/abject is, after all, a woman.
I really think that academics should have a mandatory how to write for a normal human.
I know, I'm going to break this one down.
There's so much words. There's so much.
I'm going to break this one down. I was struggling reading this one myself.
Just be a normal human.
Disavow his personal stake since the victim/abject is, after all, a woman and therefore ostensibly different from him. In Clover's words, quote, men can eat their psychosexual cake and have it too, unquote. This happens, according to Clover, in all horror films of the female victim heroine variety. But in Alien 3, additionally, the male spectator will find it easier to disavow these aberrant identifications in the course of the narrative as it becomes increasingly obvious that Ripley must die, and he, like the protagonist, learns to desire her death. So this is a pretty meaty and dense quote, so we're going to take it bit by bit. According to Alcala, the spectator must identify with the heroine, which means confronting the abject and being punished for desiring it. This might not be the case if the protagonist of the Alien franchise, or specifically Alien 3, was not a woman, but she is, right? Therefore, there is a sense of confronting the abject. We, the presumed male audience, are forced to identify with a woman, which means we are confronting the abject, the thing that we are trying to cast out, our relationship to our mother in Alien 3. The punishment here means that the desire can be rejected and reintegrated into the symbolic, which is possible for the male spectator because the victim is female. So what that means is we can say, actually, I don't want to be this thing. I'm putting it back in the symbolic box. I can do that because I'm a man. If the victim was male, it would be harder to reject and push it back towards symbolism. Because the abject is a woman and therefore different from him, the male spectator has the ability to actually disavow his personal stake in it and cast it out, whereas women cannot.
So a man can come away from this. I just didn't get Ripley in this.
And he doesn't have to,
yeah,
is the thing, because the point...
I didn't either.
Yeah, the point is to cast out the abject. The point is not necessary. You only have to...
The point of, like, literally the movie?
Yeah, is to cast out the part, the Monstrous-Feminine, especially, which Ripley does over and over again. She's casting out the Monstrous-Feminine until she literally cannot.
So she has to die.
So she has to die. So men, the male spectator can cast this out, but a woman cannot. He quotes Clover, the author of Men, Women, and Chainsaws, and says men can eat their psychosexual cake and have it too, meaning that they get the benefit of purging the objection without having to understand themselves through it, right?
Whereas women, when they see this, they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, like... Yeah. like part of, I'll talk about this in a minute, but the fact that Ripley has to die at the end of Alien 3, like I liked that she died at the end of Alien 3.
And it was her choice, but kind of not.
That's the thing is I'm going to put a pin in that.
Okay,
so
okay.
I'll get there in like
Pin.
In like 30 seconds.
Clip. Which you don't know what that means. Never mind.
Because
it's a Housewives reference.
Because of how Alien 3 in particular ends with Ripley's death, the spectator's encouraged to desire her death because that provides the final cathartic expulsion of the abject. If she does not die, it is not complete. The abject still exists in Ripley's body. So I largely agree with all of that. This is one of many reasons I'm reluctant to refer to any media as feminist, because it has a strong female character at its center. Like that's not enough. But something I found particularly interesting here is how Alcala characterizes Ripley's death. I was actually quite happy that Ripley died at the end of Alien 3, Resurrection aside.
I was just glad it ended. I've never hated a movie more.
Because it felt like she was choosing not to let her body be a site of unwanted birth or the continued abuse of the company. It's sort of a profound statement of rejecting abuse to me. Like, obviously, I wish there was a different way, but this is a movie and I don't feel particularly bad about going, hell yeah, Ripley, this is the best thing you could have done. Anyway, the reason that I brought that up was because the idea of men get the benefit of purging the abjection without having to understand themselves through it. A woman watching this movie, such as me, might be happy that we might also desire Ripley's death, but the potential for the monstrous feminine still exists in our bodies. A man does not have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. A man watches Ripley die and go, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to happen to anybody else on this planet otherwise inhabited entirely by men. Ripley's body is the site of fear, even though we know the alien is not indiscriminate about what hosts it chooses,
but
right?
It's still Ripley.
But it's Ripley is the problem. Mm-hmm. Ripley is the one carrying the alien. Ripley is the one who introduced the alien to this planet. Therefore, Ripley must die.
Therefore, all women must die.
Therefore, all and honestly, here we go. Here we go. We're gonna keep talking about this. Same essay, masochism and representation in modern horror, by Celestino Deleto Alcala, writes, the central paradox of patriarchy is not exactly the same but equivalent to the central paradox of the film. Ripley is the only character capable of ridding society of the alien, but she is at the same time the most dangerous threat to that society, as all the men sense from the beginning. Without woman, society will be destroyed, but woman brings destruction to society. The only way to incorporate this paradox into classical narrative and give it an appearance of coherence is to posit an impossible fantasy in which a group of men live happily without women around, precisely because there are no women around, until a woman comes and destroys their harmony. Once the woman has arrived, it is too late for any solution, and that society is doomed to eventually disappear. At the end of the film, the company closes off the base and life in it is brought to an end. But before this happens, in its most tendacious strategy, the female hero must come to terms with the destructive nature of her femininity and realize that the only way for this or other societies not to be infected by her femininity is her own sacrifice. So Alien 3...
depressing.
Oh, yeah. Alien 3 is not a very good or enjoyable movie for the most part. It's also, as Alcala points out in his essay, pretty fucking misogynistic.
It is. And I was kind of reading more about like why... There are obvious reasons why David Fincher hates this movie. It's bad. But one of the reasons that it was so bad is like the production company wanting to put things in. And I'm always curious like what it was. And I'm curious in this one if it was the potential rape. Mm-hmm. Like when she's almost raped. Mm-hmm. And because that, I don't know. Everything about this movie is not good to me.
David Fincher is a good filmmaker.
Yeah.
He did Gone Girl, which is adapted from the book. He did Fight Club, which is about masculinity. Like
this feels very off for him.
Yes.
It makes sense that he hates it. So I'm just curious how much of that misogyny was pushed into it.
Right.
And why he just wants it to, like I saw a quote, like I think it's his quote of like no one hates Alien 3 as much as David Fincher hates Alien 3.
Yeah.
I am curious how much of that was put in there because like it feels off-brand.
It does not track with...
No. I'm not saying he's like a feminist or anything like that, but he understands filmmaking from those points of view of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman and things like that.
Yeah. So I didn't think about this while watching, but Alcala makes a really excellent point here. The intrusion of the feminine into the masculine space is what causes all of these problems.
And you're sitting there waiting for her to almost be raped.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's like almost building.
Yeah.
It's almost building, and it like almost becomes like almost like an orgasm in its own. It builds and builds and builds. Yeah. It's very gross.
Yeah.
It's all light and ugly.
Oh, God.
Ugh, that's the worst part.
There's the alien, sure, but there's also Ripley. Like, her presence there causes upheaval. The very backward suggestion here is that it is the presence of women that cause the harm. Later in the same essay, Alcala points out that without the presence of women, these violent misogynistic criminals were able to create a stable social organization based on their intense male bonds and the rejection of women. But when Ripley comes to the community, bringing the alien with her, it destroys it.
So this movie should be remade now with the social understanding of the manosphere, and it would be interesting.
Yeah.
It would be super interesting to have that knowledge and make this movie. I think you could make bugs on the ground and film them be better than that movie, but it would be good. But that would be better.
Yeah.
There. I think when you were watching, I'm like, it's bad, right? You're like, I can see a good movie somewhere in here.
Yeah.
And that's it needs to be made in 2026 with the knowledge of the manosphere and everything that we know, and even our government and administration, and it could be there.
Yeah.
It just isn't there.
It's not that.
That
ain't it. But it could be. This is how I feel about the Wicker Man remake. Ain't it.
That ain't it. But it could have been.
But there's something there. That ain't it, though. So in that,
and David Fincher should have been able to make it.
Yeah. So again, Ripley comes to the community and brings the alien with her. That is what ultimately destroys the community. And in his essay, Alcala writes, one might even speculate that had there not been any women to molest, rape, and kill in their past, they would not have become criminals. It is the female protagonist and not the male criminals that are associated with monstrosity.
100%.
And that's part of the problem with this
100%.
idea of the monstrous feminine, right?
Yes.
Her intrusion into this space, and potentially the intrusion of the women that they raped and murdered in their life, is the problem, because they were not criminals when they were all together. When there were only men, they were not criminals. They were not harming one another. It is the presence of women that made them criminals.
And they said it would. They were open about it.
Yep. This is one of those things that I definitely don't think is intentional on the part of the filmmakers. I don't believe that David Fincher actually believes that women cause men to rape them.
Super not.
But it does show unexamined bias, right? And in this larger conversation about abjection, it really does make it feel like it is the feminine that must be cast out for our stability, not only as individuals, but as a society. Which, again, for all that these films have been called feminist or something close to it because of how they depict Ripley, that should make us question what we're seeing and what we're being told underneath that, right?
It's so girl boss.
It's so girl boss.
It's so girl boss.
So girl boss.
It's so girl boss. No one's more girl boss than the alien, though.
That's true. Let's talk about sex. Baby. I think there's a lot that is horrific in this franchise. And while we talked a lot about birth, we haven't talked about the precursor to birth, which is obviously sex. As I said, I think that the unsettling lack of boundary between the masculine and the feminine in the Alien franchise is actually more effective and can result in more interesting readings than if we just considered the alien as one or the other. In a similar fashion, the idea of sex in this film franchise is fraught. Sex, too, might be abject in this franchise because of how it's represented. Though there isn't much outright sex, there is sexuality and reproduction, and perhaps most importantly, there is rape. And all of these things are coded as suspect and fearsome in a way that creates a really interesting thematic overlap. Is sex itself frightening? Is the idea of sex, or having it, abject? In Alien and the Monstrous Feminine by Barbara Creed, Creed discusses how Freud likens seeing the Medusa to seeing a mother's genitals. This is like the
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Turns you to stone. Because within a patriarchal or phallocentric ideology, the concept of the monstrous feminine is directly linked to sexual difference and castration. Therefore, the whole idea of the Medusa myth is about the difference of female sexuality from male sexuality. The mere existence of it invokes castration anxiety. Okay, but what does any of that have to do with Alien, Melissa?
Yeah.
Why are you talking about Medusa and Freud? Well,
if you knew Missy, you'd know why.
Yeah. Well, as we've discussed, those alien and egg designs are pretty damn vaginal and pretty damn phallic. And as we've established, the monstrous feminine is everywhere in this movie franchise. So while we don't really have a Medusa-like figure, maybe you could make a case for Ripley as Medusa with the aliens as men approaching her, but I'm not going to make that case. So So while we don't like have necessarily a Medusa-like figure, we do have a whole lot of vaginal imagery that suggests castration anxiety if we go by what Creed and Freud have to say about
Okay,
it.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Castration anxiety. Why?
Why are men afraid of having their penises chopped off?
No, but why is the idea of like Medusa and all that stuff?
It's like impotence, right?
Okay.
Medusa freezes you.
Mm-hmm.
She turns you to stone. And
then you cut the wiener off.
then you cut the wiener off. And Freud is just like really big on
so
castration and phalluses and that kind of thing. Like that's not his whole deal, but like it's a big part of it. So Freud is very big on the idea of castration anxiety and penis envy. So like women envy the penis and the power that it gives you, and men fear that women could take their penises away.
Freud would not be able to watch the Vagina Dentata movie.
No.
I think it would murder him.
And the concept of vagina dentata, which I had to take out, is very tied into the Monstrous-Feminine.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. So if we go by what Creed and Freud have to say, we have, a whole lot of vaginal imagery that suggests castration anxiety, which I think is fair because not only do we have the very literal fear of castration, as in the removal of the penis, we also have a symbolic one through the destruction of manhood that comes from being penetrated sexually, right? Because in this idea, the penis is both literal and metaphorical, because the penis is the center of manhood. That's why sometimes it's called manhood. If you don't have a penis, you're not a man, essentially.
If you don't read romance books, you've probably never heard it. Never heard manhood.
And I love that for you, honestly. It's my absolute least favorite name for a penis. And I don't
know. I've read some things.
Oh, I've read some things too.
And manhood is the worst?
Yes, because it automatically yanks me out of the story and makes me go, why is the penis the center of man? Why is the manhood contained in the penis?
Your brain is too analytical for that.
My brain is too analytical to use the word manhood as a whatever the opposite of a synecdoche is for penis.
The fuck is a synecdoche?
A synecdoche is when the part stands in for the whole.
Oh, okay.
So like calling your manhood your penis, like your concept of your whatever. This is not
I get what you're
matter.
saying. I get what you're saying.
This is just not important to this. Alien as Abortion Parable by John L. Cobbs. Cobbs writes, the interiors of both the Nostromo and the derelict spacecraft on which the alien egg is found are a complex of pipes, tubes, and ducts that leave the casual viewer with a sense of disquieting familiarity. Only after we watch a while do we realize that the dominant motif of both of these craft is the interior of the human body, the windings and curvings of organs and glands. Ingmar Bergman once said that he attributed the particular cinematographic quality of cries and whispers to his idiosyncratic envisioning of the interior of the human soul as, quote, a soft red membrane, unquote. Alien achieves a strange balance between the cold, steely world of technology and forms constantly evocative of flesh, erotic flesh in particular. Not since Flash Gordon has the world of science fiction been so erotically evocative. Vaginal doorways, cervical mazes on the walls, phallic sculptures on the alien starship, and bulbous mammary projections everywhere. Virtually every scene works itself out within a matrix of sexual suggestiveness. So this reminds me quite a lot of the Lord of the Rings chapters with Shelob. It's not that it is overtly sexual. It's just that the language, in this case, visual language, is very suggestive, right? It's not necessarily about sex, right? The Shelob chapter, I think, is a good...
Can you explain the Shelob?
I know. Crazily, we have not done Lord of the Rings.
I think it's just too... it's a lot.
It is a lot.
And I think that's why we've kind of...
Yeah. It's someday we will do Lord of the Rings.
That's going to take a year to like really...
Yeah, it's a lot. I took a whole class on Lord of the Rings, you guys. Like an entire
then
class.
I have to read it.
Yeah.
There's like 700 chapters on trees.
There's not 700 chapters on trees.
700 words on trees.
It's more than 700 words. Somewhere between 700 words and 700 chapters. It's not Moby Dick about whales. Anyway,
there's a penis.
There is a penis. Now there's a penis.
There's a penis. Moby Dick.
You could draw like a pretty good. Shelob and the alien are not dissimilar. Shelob is the big spider. Is the big spider in Lord of the Rings that Sam and Frodo fight against, and she's introduced as an evil thing in spider form. She served none but herself, drinking the blood of elves and men, bloated and grown fat with endless brooding on her feasts, weaving webs of shadow For all living things were her food, and her vomit darkness. Far and wide her lesser broods, bastards of the miserable mates, her own offspring that she slews, bred from glen to glen. Basically, she has like a crazy amount of babies, and they're everywhere. Most like a spider she was, but huger than the great hunting beasts. Those same eyes that he had thought daunted and defeated, there they were lit with a fell light again, clustering in her outthrust head. Great horns she had, and behind her short stalk-like neck was her huge swollen body, a vast bloated bag, swaying and sagging between her legs. Its great bulk was black, blotched with livid marks, but the belly underneath was pale and luminous and gave forth a stench. Her legs were bent, with great knob joints high above her back, and hairs that stuck out like steel spines, and at each leg's end there was a claw. As soon as she had squeezed her soft, squelching body and its folded limbs out from the upper exit of her lair, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, that is what is the queen.
Mm-hmm. And the way that her death is, I'm trying to scan really quickly. Oh, she reached in the hole and squeezing down, leaving a trail of green-yellow slime. She slipped in even as Sam hewed a last stroke at her dragging legs. Much like this scene is not sexual, right? The language that is chosen to create this scene is sexual, right? Like, it is not, no sex occurs in this scene. We can talk about the phallic sword metaphor, the way that she's just like, the way that her body is described as like a stand-in for sex, especially in a series as devoid of sex as Lord of the Rings. So this description of the ships and the passageways and that kind of thing in Alien remind me of this passage about Shelob, because it's not that it's overtly sexual, right? But rather that the language, which in this case is visual language, is very suggestive. Even if you don't consciously pick up on things like the vaginal doorways or the phallic sculptures, it is there, right? And it can make you think about sex on a subconscious level. That's especially true when you think about the fact that this is a narrative about rape, among other things. Again, even if you don't think of it as rape, like literally, like you don't, like you never draw, like even if you watch this movie and you don't immediately go, oh, that man was raped, like
you can't say, like,
it's the tech. Subconsciously, you're probably thinking about it.
Even if you don't think it in a sexual way.
Right.
Like, it's hard to dissociate sex with rape. But like the raping of a body being
yes.
a face hugger. Like
yes.
There's no getting around that.
Yeah. Even if you don't consciously think about it as rape, the visual language is there, and that pervasive air of suggestiveness creates that sense of something being off in a sexual way, even if no sex is ever shown on screen, which it isn't until Alien 3. So again, in Masochism and Representation in Modern Horror, the case of Alien 3, which is by, again, Celestino Deleto Alcala. Alcala writes, Creed argues that in our patriarchal culture, women are often constructed as not as castrated, but as castrators, as possessors of a formidable power in their genitals and an unshakable will to castrate men. In Alien 3, the direct presentation of heterosexual lovemaking is replaced by one of its most common psychosexual representations in patriarchy, a male fantasy of castration and death at the hands of the monstrous female. Roughly at the same time as Clemens penetrates Ripley, Murphy, quote-unquote, penetrates the black hole at the bottom of which lies the beast. No need to elaborate on the broken piece of slimy tissue found on the edge or the lurking beast within. These explicit details may seem relevant, but much more so is the fact that this association establishes an allegorical fusion between Ripley and the monster, while at the same time, it insinuates the reason for the imminent disappearances of the all-male community, female sexuality paradoxically constructed as the ultimate destructive force in society. Shortly after their lovemaking, the monster catches up with Clemens and destroys him too, thus removing any doubt about the Doctor's future after making love to the only woman on the planet. If Ripley's sexual forwardness was ostensibly constructed as a proof of the film's claim to gender equality, Clemens' untimely death, and I would argue Murphy's too, soon reveals the film's true colors. It's positing of female sexuality as evil, an evil amplified by women's sexual liberation in our society.
Yes. Yeah. Go off.
Go off, Alcala. We love Alcala. Again, as I've said, I think there's a lot of potential to read the Alien films as empowering or even feminist based on how Ripley is treated as a character. She's the protagonist, she's right, she's interesting, and she's powerful and easy to identify with. But there's also all of this baggage, particularly beyond the first film, that gives me a great deal of pause. There's also interesting contrasts and comparisons between Ripley and the aliens, such as we discussed earlier with Motherhood. But then there's the parallel Alcala discusses here, where Ripley and the monster are essentially both intruders into a male space that will bring harm to them, and that will bring harm with them by their mere presence. I think it's interesting to have a film that uses violation of the male body in a way that is both metaphorically and literally connected to rape, targeted at what I think it's safe to say is primarily male viewers. But at the same time, this overall demonizing of female sexuality and reproduction gives me, again, some amount of pause, particularly in the third film.
You can't not. Like, the third film just, like, it ruins so much of what it's done. I literally have to, it does not, it's... Even the fourth film, I can be like, yeah, this is part of this.
Much of it was at least enjoyable to watch.
Yes, it was fun to watch.
Yeah. The fourth film is ridiculous because Joss Whedon has never been normal about sex.
He just made a prototype for Firefly.
Yeah. And Aliens was primarily about motherhood, but also about unchecked reproduction without a male participant. I don't know, guys. There's something going on here with sex, and it doesn't seem particularly favorable to women, you know? Like, and that's what I mean. Like, when I am reluctant, and like as Creed said in that quote, like, just because the monstrous feminine exists and has agency doesn't mean that we immediately give it the quality of liberation. This is also one of the many reasons why I am loath to call a piece of media feminist, because, like, what is being said under the surface, especially when that media is like about a liberated or strong female character, you know, what else is being said under the surface?
This is the problem you had with The Witch.
Yeah, this is one of the problems I had with The Witch. This is
maybe not a problem, but the problem with the interpretation.
Yeah. And that was something I kind of had to confront in myself, because I did initially read The Witch as very liberating.
Yeah.
And then I thought I had to think about it more, and I read some of the criticisms.
Liberating to who?
Yeah. The last thing I have to talk about is genre. And genre is both my favorite and least favorite topic. As always, I want to preface this conversation by saying that we're not here to debate what genre these films are, especially because I think it's pretty obvious that they genre hop from film to film, but rather to take a look at them from a genre perspective and see what we can learn from that. And there simply isn't space to do like a genre analysis film by film and genre by genre, because we're already pushing 2 hours.
And I think that'd be boring.
And that would be boring. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about two of the major genres and what people apply these to mean. And then, like, just sort of a short, here's what we can draw out based on what we've already talked about.
Okay.
We're also only going to talk about two genres and then briefly touch on a couple more that I think are most rewarding and that I think are applicable across the franchise to varying degrees of effectiveness. And those two genres are science fiction and horror. So science fiction. Let's talk about sci-fi. The thing about science fiction is that it's actually really difficult to pin down from a definition perspective. We may immediately think of things like aliens and spaceships, but then you can get stuff like Star Wars, and you're like, this is actually pretty fantastical in execution, especially because of how it responds to Joseph Campbell's monomyth, boo, hiss, etc. There's also hard versus soft sci-fi, with hard primarily exploring verifiable science extrapolated, and soft sci-fi often focusing on social sciences, as if those aren't both verifiable. Seriously, this shit makes no fucking sense.
And there's junk science.
Which
is my favorite science
genre. And then there are subgenres within sci-fi, right? For our purposes, we're going to go very, very general, and we're going to use Wikipedia. Science fiction, often shortened to sci-fi or abbreviated SF, is the genre of speculative fiction that imagines advanced and futuristic scientific or technological process. Period. We're stopping there. We are not going any deeper than that. In this way, yeah, the Alien franchise is science fiction so far, right? It is certainly not optimistic, and it certainly has other elements to it, but it is pretty undeniable that this is an advanced and futuristic society with lots of technological progress, right?
I mean, they have cryo freezing.
Yes, they've got it. So, in Beautiful Monsters, the Unofficial and Unauthorized Guide to the Alien and Predator Films by David A. McIntee, McIntee writes, "What Alien is not is a science fiction movie. Science fiction is about humanity and how it might develop under other, usually future circumstances. It asks, will we be better or worse? In what way will developments affect the way that we think and act? Alien doesn't explore these issues. It would work just the same if it were set aboard, say, a tramp steamer that picked up something nasty in the jungles of South America. It's set on a spaceship in the future, but it's about people trying not to get eaten by a drooling monstrous animal. Worse, it's about them trying not to get raped by said drooling monstrous animal." And I mean, Sure. Quibbling over genre is boring, so we're not going to do that with McIntee here.
I think it's just wrong.
He is. I will say that most speculative fiction is about more than just whatever it is, right? But he does make a decent point here with regard to the fact that the story does not have to be set in space to be effective. So what do we make of the fact that it is?
Well, like you said earlier, there's a lot of sucking out into the void.
Yep.
And that is important. That can't happen just anywhere.
The thing is, like, yes, you could tell this story in another setting, but it would be a different story.
Yes, 100%.
So the fact that it is set in space should lead us to ask, why is it set in space? Why did they choose to do this? What does it tell us about this story that it is set in space and not on a steamer that picked up something weird from South America? Well, I think honestly that this makes the Alien franchise very pessimistic. I had to take out our sections on capitalism and ecofeminism simply because this episode is already quite long, but I will try to bring them back
Don't
for the
worry.
next episode.
You will. I guarantee you.
Because I think they're topics worth discussing. Anyway, my point here is that setting this movie on a spaceship in the future tells us something about the filmmaker's perspective. That either there's no hope of dealing with the exploitation of workers by companies like the aptly named company, or that the only thing that can deal with them is the alien. Or perhaps the only thing scarier than a goopy alien that might rape and kill you is in fact the company that wants that to happen to you for their own purposes. Again, I couldn't go too deep into capitalism here, but...
So are you saying that the Alien movies are showing a world in which...
we can't get away from this shit. Exploitation.
Even if there's an alien comes down to Earth or alien comes down to human, that even then capitalism will be intruding in our life.
I do believe that that's what's happening. The exploitation of the workers on the Nostromo, the fact that the company says... Mary's literally twirling her hair at me.
I just can't wait to watch the show.
Am I doing a good reading?
I think you're doing the reading that the person who did the show did.
Good.
I legit, you are setting up the show.
Excellent.
You are setting up the show.
I love when I do a good reading.
You're setting up the show and then add in there some abuse to children.
Okay. So again, perhaps what this film is saying by setting it in the far future on a spaceship is that the only thing scarier than a goopy alien that might rape and kill you is the company that wants you to be raped and killed by a goopy alien for their own purposes.
I mean, you made the point earlier that what's his name, the synthetic, is worse than the alien.
Yes.
And I think that feeds into that point very well. I think that most people would probably have a knee-jerk reaction to what you said, but I definitely think that they're wrong.
What do you mean by that?
I think that a lot of people would be like, no, this has nothing to do with that. This
is capitalism?
Yes, this has nothing to do with capitalism.
That's crazy to me.
I think a lot of people would feel that way.
I think that just means that they haven't thought about the movie.
I think that what's worse is I think that they just don't.
Especially when you get into Aliens and you have Burke as the primary.
They completely devalue people as human when they're workers.
Yeah,
I think,
true.
or it's just part of reality.
Yeah.
And it's just part of reality and we live it and therefore it shows here. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you're wrong. I just think I would love to see people get mad. I think people just get mad about their dearly held old horror specifically and sci-fi very specifically. Yeah. So
Alien and Aliens in particular are to me heavily informed by capitalism. Mm-hmm. And maybe especially Aliens because Aliens doubles down on what Alien said as far as capitalism, which is like this company will let you be raped and killed
and we will also
profit.
Bomb you.
And we will bomb you and then we will go and colonize the planet and sacrifice all of the colonists to line our pockets and we're going to send Burke, the company man, with you to make you do it again.
Yes. On a very different side note, as I'm thinking about the show and everything, I just want you to know I know who your favorite character will be.
Okay.
And it might one might be the guy who plays in Six of Crows, your son.
Oh, my son,
He's
Jesper.
in it. But the eye will be your favorite character.
The eye?
The eye will be your fucking favorite character.
Is that a person or is it an eye?
It is an eye.
Okay. I like that.
It will be your favorite fucking character. It was my favorite character.
I love this. I love this for me.
Yes, you will love the eye. If I'm trying to hype you up for this show.
And then I'm going to be like, this sucks.
That's going to end. You might feel that way. You might feel that way.
I'm very interested to know.
I'm so curious how literally the show and this ending and like the response to it and my feelings toward it are why I wanted to do this because I'm curious what you think of it. I still don't know what to think of it. Anyways, we're not talking about that.
This is another quote from Beautiful Monsters by McIntee, who writes, what really makes Aliens, we're now onto Aliens. It was Alien, which he said was not a sci-fi film. What really makes Aliens cross over between different audiences and thus grab more admirers is that it is actually two completely different, polar opposite, in fact, types of movie in one. It's a macho, gung-ho, testosterone-fueled shoot-'em-up that appeals to men and I'm so sorry for what I'm about to say, maternally themed chick flick that appeals to women. It's also, unlike its predecessor, a proper science fiction movie. Alien was a horror film, a thriller. Aliens explores how humanity might face the challenges that the future will bring, in suggesting that families will be needed to keep people sane for the length of time necessary for terraforming. It is doing science fiction's job of relating humanity to future challenges and developments. Also, I apologize in advance for the word that I'm going to use in this paragraph. I am quoting it. Yeah. It's also like most of Walter Hill's productions, and it's the use of this word is like intentional because it's
You're like building me up.
I'm building you up. It's also like most of Walter Hill's productions, a Western in disguise. It has a frontier town, Hadley's Hope, under siege from the Injuns, aliens, and subsequently the cavalry, USCMC, come to fight them off. Of course, most Westerns don't end with the town razed to the ground. There's some big claims here, honestly. McIntee is much more confident in his opinion than I am, but let's take these as some different lenses through which to view the film. I think action is a good genre to describe what's happening in Aliens, particularly as while, yes, the alien is a threat, they also seem to have to create many more of them now that there are big guns to blast them away, you know? Like, once you establish that the alien can be killed with fire, for example, you then have to have many more aliens to fight.
Bigger female, more gun.
Yes.
More gun, bigger female.
Exactly.
There's a guy that explains things as if you are a football player with CTE, and that's how he explains them. He's like, it's very funny.
The chick flick claim is crazy.
Wild. I would love to know what about this.
Well, as you see, it's
women
about
equal chick flick.
You see, it's about being a mother. Therefore,
women's issues equal chick flick.
Yes, all of them universally.
That is so bizarre. Like any world in which you call this a chick flick is, first of all, chick flick is a stupid name. But to any world in which you call this a chick flick, I don't trust a word that you say, and that I don't trust that you understand what you're saying, and I don't trust you as a human. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird behavior.
It's weird behavior.
I'm choosing the bear.
The chick flick claim is crazy, especially given what we discussed above. Like, yeah, this movie is about motherhood, but it's also pretty buck wild to think that makes it a chick flick. McIntee also states that this is a proper sci-fi movie, unlike Alien, because it relates, quote, humanity to future challenges and developments, which, yeah, it does do that, I suppose. But is that really all sci-fi is? Like, relating to the future? I don't think so.
I think that's someone trying to sound smart.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I also don't think that saying the original isn't sci-fi is a particularly interesting take, because we should ask why the filmmakers chose to set it on a spaceship. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't have done it, right? Clearly something mattered about that. And we're not going to talk about Westerns, but I will say that what McIntee says about Westerns here is pretty true. The fact that it is about this established colony that is overrun by an intruder. And it's an interesting way to view the franchise, but we're not going to talk about that.
The intruder could go both ways.
Truly. Like, who, again, ecofeminism. Who is the intruder? Is it the colonist, or is it the being that lived there first? So let's talk about horror. Horror is, I think, the thing most associated with the Alien franchise, not least because the first movie is the best one and is definitely more on the horror side than the rest of them. But I do think that there are elements of horror to all of them. The humans are always being stalked by something. The aliens are always uncanny. There are always elements of the abject and Monstrous-Feminine, etc. Obviously, some of them are more horrific than others, but I do think that horror is an important component even, and maybe especially, when the films fail to be horrific. Because I think that 3 and 4 are not particularly horrific. They're not very scary.
3 is
boring.
3 is dumb. 4 is I think it's hard. What's hard for me with 4 is going in knowing Joss Whedon did it.
Yes,
because all I can see is Firefly and how dumb this is. I would have enjoyed it more. I think not knowing Joss Whedon did it.
Yeah, because you can really see his fingerprints and they're not good.
I mean, Jane's there.
Oh God.
And I mean, River, obviously.
And I can't not like Ron Perlman. Like, I just love Ron Perlman.
Anyways.
It's easy to hate that fucking Baldwin guy, but I can't hate Ron Perlman. It's Ron Perlman.
Hellboy.
That's a Hellboy.
He's just my boy.
Where was I? So I do think that horror is an important component, even and maybe especially when the films fail to be horrific. Anyway, the more important question is, what happens when we look at these through the lens of horror? What does the element of horror tell us about how the film is meant to be read? What does the element of that's what I just said. I think we've covered this a lot in a more general sense about objection, etc. But there is more to it that's covered very well by Douglas Fowler. So I'm just going to let Douglas Fowler guide us through.
Lifting.
He's going to do the heavy lifting here for the section on horror. So in Alien, the Thing, and the Principles of Terror, Fowler writes, as the destruction of her companions progresses, we come to see that she alone shows both courage and prudence, and her humanity is deftly signaled to us by the dangers she braves to rescue the ship's cat. Ellen Burstyn as mother of the possessed in The Exorcist, and Mia Farrow as mother for the Antichrist in Rosemary's Baby play much the same part as Weaver. Decent and caring every woman frightened to the core, but always able to act because they remain just a little more brave than frightened. Good Gothic art must include these personalities, for it is through them that we include ourselves in the action. Most tales of terror are potentially absurd, or worse, potentially ridiculous, and we need to see and feel the threat from inside a personality much like our own, or our own as we hope it would be. So this is more general, but I do think it's such an important point to consider. We must be able to identify to some degree with at least one character in the film, or it becomes absurd or ridiculous. I really do think that's how you end up with really bad slasher films. If you don't root for at least one of the characters, you're not scared. You end up rooting for their deaths. They can be like comedic, but I don't think that they fail to be terrifying, right?
Yeah, 100%. I watched Scream 7 last night.
Oh yeah, how was that?
Fine.
Okay. Clover covers this very well in Men, Women, and Chainsaws, as she discusses clearly why so many horror movies have final girls as a means of letting the male audience identify with her through her successful appropriation of male power, even though she must be a woman to experience the kind of abject terror required of a horror film.
So it's her gaining the masculine to win that makes them be able to relate.
Yes. They have to, in order to be, they can't fully identify with somebody who is under like experiencing the abject terror. It has to be a woman essentially to experience abject terror, or it threatens masculinity. But
it's the introduction of the masculine.
Yes. To be successful, to cast out the abject, she appropriates the male weapon or whatever. Not literally, like she doesn't necessarily take the weapon off of the killer or whatever, but she uses a weapon to, say, penetrate the male villain.
So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I have an answer, and I'm curious what your answer would be. Mine's silly. In this world, what would using a non-masculine, so feminine specifically, use of winning or defeating, what would that be?
I think we have to consider the language of film and the language of our culture, because the language of our culture would obviously be that this female character, this final girl, loves the monster.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Into no longer being a monster or a killer or whatever.
It's like a lot of my dark romances.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the female, the understood female capacity for love as a redemptive force.
Okay.
On a personal level, what would I consider female violence? The movie Teeth.
Oh, okay. Not even female violence, just female to win. Because you could feasibly make the jump that the violence is still male.
Yeah.
I have an answer. Would you like to hear my answer?
I would like to hear your answer.
In Cabin in the Woods, when the little girls defeat the evil by singing and turn it into a frog, that is my answer.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Anyways, That was all just to get to that.
That was all just well, so while not every viewer is going to identify with Ripley, there are a lot of reasons to identify with Ripley, right? She's a woman, which is more than most movies can say, honestly. She's badass. She's a worker. She's interesting. She's resolute in what she believes, and so on. And this is actually really important. It's going to sound kind of funny, but it is actually really important. She cares about that fucking cat.
Yeah.
We care about pets. Therefore, we can see ourselves in her. This is a really common piece of writing advice. If people struggle to relate to your character, make them a reader. Works every time.
John Wick
Cares about his pets.
cared about a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Everything would have been fine.
Yep. It's
well, you know what? You know what's gross? Want to hear something bad?
okay.
When you take a woman and take her away and you kill her, and that's how you get them to relate. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. So in the same essay, Alien, the Thing, and the Principles of Horror, Fowler writes, this final sequence is played out with the titillating application of the darkest and most discomforting of all of our principles of pleasurable terror, sexual sadism. In fact, the moments that just precede the climax of the film are an almost diagrammatic demonstration of the implications of one of Ralph Harper's statements in his excellent study, The World of the Thriller. Quote, there are so many occasions in the course of reading a thriller where I ask who I am. Am I the torturer or the victim? The answer sometimes comes out more slowly and uncertainly than we might expect. So here Fowler is talking about the scene in which we view Ripley in her underwear before she gets in the pod. Mm-hmm. So again, Fowler is not talking specifically about Alien here, but I think this is important when thinking about horror media. And this is like kind of a bee I've had in my bonnet for the past 10,000 years, but also specifically over the past like 3 months or so. I'll get into that in a minute. But I think this is important when talking about horror media. The Alien franchise included, because for the presumed straight male viewer, there are some disconcerting things happening within Alien, right? Sometimes you're meant to identify with Ripley when she appropriates male power, and sometimes you aren't when she's terrified. And sometimes she's imbued with the quality of to be looked atness that signifies the male gaze, such as when she's changing toward the end of the first film. So if that's the case, are we the torturer or are we the victim? Can we be both? Are we Ripley or are we the alien? Do we inhabit different spaces throughout the course of the film? The lack of a stable answer here is, I think, what makes the first film such a masterpiece. Even if it's not my favorite movie, I can admit that it's a really fucking great movie.
Yeah, I loved the second one the most, but the first one is so good. It's hard to say that the second one is my favorite.
Yeah.
It's such a well-made movie.
Yeah.
In many respects.
And I think, listen, I don't love the scene where Ripley is just chilling in her underwear. And if it was in fact going for this idea of who am I the torturer or the tortured, they could have been a little more clear about that and just not had me just so clearly ogling Ripley. But the lack of a stable answer, the fact that the only person who could be looking at Ripley in that way is the alien. Like, we are in a sense inhabiting the alien's eyes there. I would feel okay saying that that's what they were trying to do. I hope that's what they're trying to do, but you never know for certain in films.
It's such a well-made film. It'd be hard not to, right?
Well, the problem for me is the existence of the male gaze. Like, every movie exhibits male gaze. Am I the camera or am I the alien? Like, for whose benefit is this being shown?
I would love to know, because to me, I feel like they're smart enough to have done that, because it does feel like when you say who can be having this view, it's the alien.
But the camera isn't about always who is looking. Sometimes the camera is just the camera.
But in such an intimate scene, I get, it's hard.
We don't know for certain. Yeah. I feel like if that, for example, and I don't think it does though, if they had transitioned to a handheld camera for that scene, so that you can feel the shake of the fact that it's organic, an organic view, that I think would have lended it that clear.
You would have known for sure.
You would have known for sure that there was a human quality to or a creature.
I'd love the idea though of it being like ambiguous in that, like, what's that say about you?
Right. Yeah. So again, the lack of that stable answer here is, to me, I think one of the things that makes the film, like the first film, such a masterpiece. We can't come to a completely clear conclusion. And even if that results from the camera treating Sigourney Weaver like a sexy piece of meat at times.
PETA.
A sexy PETA. It does still create something interesting to watch. I started running out of breath in the middle of that.
I like
sentence.
sexy PETA. It will stick
A
forever.
sexy piece of meat.
Sexy PETA meat.
The last quote I have is still from Fowler, but don't worry, I still have 3 paragraphs after that to talk about it. Because this is where I'm going to get on my fucking soapbox and let that be out of my bonnet.
Let me build it for you.
What are you doing?
Building a box.
Oh, I thought you were like playing a triangle.
I could do that too.
Mary's playing a triangle in anticipation.
Here's the box. I'm hammering it. That's how you make boxes.
Mary's playing the Jaws theme on the triangle. Ding ding. Ding ding.
Ding, 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 ding. That's exactly what's happening. As Missy morphs into a shark.
Yeah. So final quote here from Alien, The Thing and the Principles of Terror by Douglas Fowler. Fowler writes, "The importance of our own cruelty and destructive impulses in the experience of literature and film has never been given anything like the attention it deserves, and the very vocabulary with which we would have to begin discussing the subject, sadism, masochism, suicide, is still contaminated with hospital odors and thus connotations of criminal deviation we are unlikely to casually assign ourselves. And yet, of course, terror, brutality, irrevocable loss, and catastrophic suffering are some of the most obvious properties of our literature, especially of our terror literature. And it seems long past the time when a smack of dainty parlor radicalism should still cling to a claim that art is sometimes a dream state wherein we can act out fantasies of destruction and self-immolation we cannot allow ourselves to act out in the real world."
That's smart.
Mm-hmm. I actually do think it's really important to talk about this and to think about this. I mean, I know
First step on the soapbox.
Yep, I'm getting up there. I know that I do this. I have accepted that something really important to me is a sense of catharsis from experiencing things through fiction that I definitely would not do in real life. My favorite characters, the ones that really matter to me, are often variations on darker versions of myself. And part of that is because I did for a long time struggle with whether or not I'm a good person. I enjoy darker fiction and horror and that kind of thing because of its willingness to engage with the fact that, as Fowler states, quote, "art is sometimes a dream state wherein we can act out fantasies of destruction and self-immolation we cannot allow ourselves to act out in the real world. I am not brought comfort by fiction without conflict, not just because I can't really immerse myself in it. Like, I just can't. If the world is without conflict, then I'm like, why am I here? You know? But not just for that reason, but because I want to experience those things that I actually don't let myself experience in real life. To apply this to Alien, the essay goes on to talk about how the fact that Ripley survives makes us happy, obviously, in the first film. We're happy that Ripley survives. But that we might have been even happier if she did not. The essay also cites Geiger as saying essentially that painting the horrors he saw in his dreams after he woke up was a soothing exercise for him, sort of exercising or casting out the abject, right?
Okay.
The point here is that, as we've discussed, horror can provide the cathartic sense of abjection, of rejecting that which we see as unclean. I think in order for that sense to work properly, we need to view the film through the lens of horror. I also think that we should, as an audience, understand our capacity for evil. I actually think this is so important.
Let me tell you, this is really important to Missy.
It is really important.
This is not the first time those words have come out of her mouth.
This isn't necessarily a movie about human evil, right? The primary villain is, in fact, the inhuman alien. But there are lots of little moments of evil, too. Not listening to Ripley, right? The betrayal of the company, some of the casual human cruelty that leads to the ultimate disasters. I mean, like, hell.
The treatment of the synthetic.
Colonialism. If we don't acknowledge that we, as individuals, are capable of evil, we let ourselves and actual evil off the hook. Evil is not an innate quality, and I will die on that hill. Like, the evil that we see in the real world is perpetuated by humans. I do not believe in demons as they're out there like puppeting. I don't know exactly what people who disagree with me on this believe is the quality of evil. Like, are you born evil? I think you can make evil choices, that kind of thing. But like, I believe that anybody is capable of making an evil choice. I believe that anybody is capable of making a cruel choice. And if we don't acknowledge the fact that if I don't acknowledge that I'm capable of cruelty, I'm kind of letting myself off the hook, right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of letting other people off the hook too, because I'm like, oh, you're just innately evil. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to be evil. I also apply this to conversations like about men. When people are like, well, men are evil. If I say men are evil, I'm actually letting men off the hook for all of their bad behavior. Yeah. Men are fucking people.
Yeah.
They They have the capacity to do evil and they have the capacity to do cruelty. This is really examined really well in The Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, where she was reluctant to report intimate partner violence because she was afraid that people would view her female partner as representative of the larger group of queer women. Like, we have to acknowledge our capacity for evil, both as individuals and as parts of a society. We are all capable of doing terrible things. That doesn't mean that we do them, right? I'm not saying everybody is cruel and evil. I actually don't believe that at all. And it's actually really important to my worldview that I don't believe that at all. It just means that we're capable of them. Maybe we should stop casting that part of ourselves out and start accepting that it exists, right? The alien was inside of us the whole time. What's really funny is I didn't put that in the outline. I just said that as my final line.
Oh my God. That's very good.
Thank you. Thank you. And now I'm putting the soapbox away. I'm off of it.
You put it away for
I'll put it away until our next episode. I'm sure I'll find a way to say it.
Well, like I said, the capitalism, the eco-friendly.
Well, our next episode is going to be on the wind in the door. Yeah. So I don't know.
Our next alien episode.
I'm sure I'll find a way to talk about this again. Do you have anything else to say?
No, I love this movie.
Thank God, because we're at 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Oh my God. No, I love this movie. I love this discussion. What I really was excited about this discussion is that we're coming at this movie specifically when talking about like birth and female and stuff from two very different viewpoints of like motherhood and birth, of Missy wanting absolutely nothing to do with it and me having gone through it and having a child. And it's interesting and it was fun, and I am the alien.
And Mary is the alien.
I'd be really curious.
And I'm casting her out. The power of Christ compels you.
I need someone to take a poll of every person on the planet and ask who they relate to the most in this. And I'm really curious who, like, the demographics of who would relate to who.
I relate most to Ripley, but only when she's going after the cat. That I'm like, yes, that is so relatable. I would do anything for a cat because I have cat brainworms. So that's it for this episode. You can find us online at fakegeekgirlscast.com, which has a link to our Patreon if you want to give us a little something every month. A little money.
Cha-ching.
Cha-ching. We do this all for the money. I hope you know. Yeah. I put in this insane amount of labor. I was looking at the MFA requirements for UW because I have normal daydream.
More things to do.
I have normal daydreams like getting my master's. And you have to write 20 to 30 pages of criticism. And I was like, hey,
that's it.
I just did that. This episode is 22 pages long. So
you could hand
great news, everybody.
So
Anyway, next time we're going to talk about A Wind in the Door by Madeleine L'Engle, and then we will return with the remaining Alien films and also the show New Earth, which I think is 3 films and then the show. So that's it.
All right, catch you on the flip side of Aliens.